Greetings, brothers. Welcome to our weekly tactics video, and today it's the highly requested elite tier list. There's 33 elites, so it's kind of a longer video, and it is Friday night, so grab yourself a beer, grab yourself some crisps, and come right back. If you enjoyed today's video at any point, smash that like button. If you want to see future Blood Angels content every week here on YouTube, then you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, find the notification bell, and change your notifications to all. I will catch you in the next video. I really hope you enjoy this. Peace. Alright, good evening guys, thanks for joining us. I'm here with Tony and Mark, and we're doing the highly requested elite tier list. There are 33 units in this list, so strap yourselves in. I think it's time to grab a beer. I think Tony's brought a keg of beer, and this will be a long one. So thanks again for joining me, Mark, Tony, and we'll get straight into it. So we're gonna start with unit number 1 today, which is going to be our Aggressors. And why don't we start with you on this one, Mark?
No worries. So the Aggressors as a unit role are slow and resilient and tough. They put out huge amounts of strength force shots, whether you take them as a flame variant or the bolt variant. They got power fists, so they hit really hard, but not very accurately. What are you going to use these for? You're going to use them to walk slowly up the board, or possibly in a transport, but let's face it, probably not, given how much you smash transports recently. And they're going to try and take and hold central areas and discourage people from coming near you with the overwatch fire from the flamers, or they're going to shoot things at the bolters. Resilience-wise, toughness is good. Toughness 5, 3 wounds is good. Saber 3 up is not great. Well, it's average. No invul save is not great for them, but that can be given. You can have access to transhumans. And you can have access to the other Gravis stratagem that gives you +1 save against 1 damage weapons. So they can be fairly resilient. Back them up with an Apothecary or a Sanguinary Priest, they can be pretty good. The only real problem is their offensive output is not great, and it doesn't really synergize as well as some of the things could do with the Blood Angel rules. So it's a good option, but it's not a great option, and it's definitely not a useless option. It's kind of where I'm at with these.
And what about you, Tony?
I mean, they really suffer, and I think part of the thing they suffer from is the fact that in 8th edition they were utterly broken. Like, the best thing in the game, stupid. And then they came into 9th, and I don't think they're broken. I don't think they're rubbish either, actually. I have to admit that I'm not running them, but only because I think there's better options. I mean, Toughness 5 is really nice. There's a lot of strength 4 fire going around, and it means that you're going to be wounding on a 5. 3 wounds is pretty tasty. The unyielding transhuman makes them quite tough. The damage output from them, I mean, you've got 3 attacks, +1 for shock assault, +1 for assault doctrine, makes them quite nice, but it is a power fist, so they are going to be wounding everything in the game on a 3 or a 2. That's pretty nice, but they're 40 points, which makes them really expensive. 45 if you want the grenade launcher bolt storm one, which, to be honest, I probably don't. I like the flame storms because you can assault and still shoot something. You can advance and still shoot. Which is 45 points, and I just think we've got a better way to spend it. I don't like the fact that they still get the -1 to hit on those power fists. And with only sort of, all right, with all those extra attacks, you get sort of 5 attacks, but you're only going to get 2 or 3 hits from each guy. That's not enough, really. And the firepower isn't really enough either. 2d6 strength 4 shots from the flame storms really isn't enough. I mean, I suppose it's nice if someone's going to charge you with some repentia and you can overwatch them with it, but they're not going to be that. Generally, people aren't going to be that daft. And at 5-inch move, they're not going to get anywhere to kill anything. You can't transport them unless you've got a repulsor or a Thunderhawk. And whilst as hard as I am trying to bring back Thunderhawk meta, it's not happening yet. And you'd be mental to buy a repulsor, put one in. I suppose you could. You could reserve it, but aren't there better things? These are like eradicators, but without the damage output, really. I think is the best way of putting them.
Yeah, you know, I kind of agree with everything you guys said. I prefer the Flamers over the Bolters right now. Unfortunately, all my guys are built with Bolters because Bolters, as we touched on, were so good last edition. So if I was going to use them, I would run them with the Flamers. Like you said, maybe be able to overwatch some models coming to the centre of the board. But you don't get enough hits with the Power Fist, the -1 to hit, and then I actually think in this case the Power Fist actually got hurt by their damage being normalised, you know, with the Dreadnoughts -1 damage, the Death Guards -1 damage. So yeah, I don't hate them. I think 40 points per model for a toughness 5 with 2 Flamers and like a Power Fist and I guess like base 3 attacks is okay. As you said, you can make them a little bit more survival with transhuman. I'm guessing they're like, for me, they're probably a B, right? Like, I don't think they're crap, but like, I don't really think they're great, but I could see them situationally being good. What about yourself? We'll start with you, Tony.
For me, they're a C. I know we're trying to review things in a vacuum, but we've tried that and it didn't work outrageously well. And the elite slot for us is so congested. And I just think they get pushed out by pretty much so many of our other options. They're not hitty enough, they're not tough enough, and they're a bit too many points. So I think for me, they are, unfortunately, sadly, the top end, but of the C.
Okay. And what about you, Mark?
They're definitely not S tier. They're definitely not dunce tier. They're absolutely somewhere in the middle. I'm not using them. I can't foresee a situation where I would use them because there are so many other better options available for the purposes I want to run them. Elite, as Tony said, it's where all of the key stuff we want to take is. And this just doesn't feature. Having said that, they're not a shit unit, really, when you get right down to it. They're a perfectly valid option for midfield holding stuff. We just have things that are better at it. So, I don't know. Somewhere B and C, somewhere in there. I'm not entirely sure where.
Okay, I think we'll start with them at high C because they're the first ones in the list, and if we, we'll see where things go. But I think high C, low B is sort of where these guys are at. Okay, cool. Let's move straight on then because we got a lot to get through. Terminator Ancient is what's up next, and why don't you jump in first on this one, Mark?
So Terminator Ancient, straight up. He is not as good as any other Terminator Ancient because of the way Blood Angels cannot take the chapter command upgrade for Ancients and therefore have access to the special abilities you get for that in the Warlord traits, which is a real shame. Having said that, what do we got here? We got 100 points. We got your basic Terminator stat line. 5 wounds is pretty good. 2 up, 5 up is pretty good. Ultimately, if you're taking him for his banner, which is +1 leadership is completely irrelevant to everything we do. Well, not completely, but like 90% of the time it's completely irrelevant. The having an attack on death is nice and all that, but
I never see great value in it because it's 50-50, right?
Yeah, it's not reliable. It's fun. It's useful if you've got a load of models around who are in a ruck and getting fought and getting killed and so on, but it's not that amazing, really, when you get right down to it. I'm not really all that impressed by this model. I own one. I'm not ever sure I'd really use him. I own one because he was better in previous editions, and these days I'm never going to take him out of the cabinet, which is a shame.
Yeah, and what about you, Tony?
I don't particularly like him. I don't think he's particularly good. He's got quite a lot of wounds, which is quite nice. He's only toughness 4, but he's in Terminator armor. That gives him his 2+ and his 5++. There's an interesting discrepancy because, I mean, we're looking at Wikipedia here, but if you're in here, it actually gives you the option of giving him a Storm Shield.
That's a different chapter. That's an option for Dark Angels or Space Wolves, I believe.
I don't know. I can't find anything that says we can't. So I'm not so sure about that because it's just listed as Space Marines in here and there isn't a separate entry for him anywhere else. So unless there's a rule that I'm missing that says specifically we can't give him a Storm Shield.
I'm reading it in the app at the moment and it looks like it's a Dark Angels thing.
So if you could, that would improve him a little bit because it'd make him a little bit tougher. If you want someone to just sit on an objective, give 4+ chances to shoot things back when they die, but It's not really all that good. You could take one if you wanted someone to give obsec and stuff around it. You could stick an obsec warlord trait on him. Which
I suppose the trick is if you're doing that with a character, you're doing it with a more potent character that we can get otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. So the only reason I could think of to do that is if there was no other possible character you had, and you really wanted that 2+ armor save and 5+ invulnerable save. Yeah, he's a lot of points as well. He's the most expensive, I think, of all the ancients, except for the Sanguinary Ancient. At 100 points, he's a bloody expensive warlord trait caddy, basically.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right there. I think, at the start of this edition, they obviously removed Standard of Sacrifice from us because they maybe thought it was too powerful. But with all these new codexes, I'm looking at it thinking like, we could really use the Standard of Sacrifice back. And at that point, I think he becomes interesting. But without Standard of Sacrifice, and I actually own 2 of these guys, one with the Thunderhammer, one with the Lightning Claw, and it was for using them with Standard of Sacrifice. So yeah, I actually think like as he stands right now, the 4+ on death, it's not like you're going to be using it with models that teleport in, and those models that teleport in with him are likely going to be Terminators. So you're a 4+ to hit, because you're -1 to hit with your Thunderhammers and only a 50% chance of actually making a hit, then you're actually talking like, if a model dies, you have a 1 in 4 chance of it actually probably making a hit and getting to do the extra hit and actually hitting. So what? You lose 4 Terminators, so it's about 200 points, and you get 1 Thunderhammer attack? Well, that is not a reason to take this guy at all. That's tragic.
He doesn't have to be sporting Terminators, but yeah, I appreciate the point.
Yeah, so like I think he's D right now. Where do you guys want to put him?
I think he is a D. Let's be honest. Well, I mean, probably all the ancients, maybe.
Yeah, I can't see any argument not to put him any higher than D.
Argument not to. Maybe if you had one of these guys, because you had one of those big Death Star units of Hellblasters, and you wanted to sit him amongst your Hellblasters, so when they started getting killed off, they might get shot off. But
he's got a pretty sculpted Blood Angels banner. That's nice.
That's a beautiful model.
Yeah.
That's the best thing about him.
I wish he was better.
Alright, D for the Terminator Ancient. We move next into the Standard Apothecary. So this is not the Primaris Apothecary. We will come back to that a little bit later. I mean, maybe we can do a twofer here actually and look at the regular Apothecary and the Primaris Apothecary at the same time, because I believe, I could be wrong here, the only difference is that the Primaris Apothecary is going to get 1 more wound and 1 more attack, right?
Yeah, 5 more points.
And 5 more points.
Strats.
And then any specific Primaris strats, yes. Okay.
He gets a better bolt pistol as well.
Yay.
Yeah, the standard Apothecary just gets a bolt pistol. Everyone knows what a bolt pistol is, whereas the Primaris one gets a fancy bolt pistol, which is strength 5 with 2 damage.
18-inch range as well, rather than 12.
18-inch range as well. So really what we're saying here is it's 5 points more and it's better. It's got more.
If you've got 5 points spare, then always buy the Primaris Apothecary, unless you've got
5 points, you get an extra attack, an extra wound, and a better gun, and you get access to transhuman.
Unless you've got a delivery method that relies on it being firstborn, like Drop Pod or Rhino or something else weird like that.
Yeah.
Bottom line is that the Apothecary is one of the most competitive units that Space Marines have access to right now, due to the upgrades you can give them with Chief Apothecary, Selfless Healer, and all that jazz.
Now,
They're so good.
I think they've taken a hit. I think they've been knocked back a bit. The fact that
they deserved it.
Is so expensive. They were massively undercosted. I completely agree with you.
They were also taking every competitive list going.
And I would argue in some ways, actually, that the Selfless Healer, for us, is now almost better in some ways on the Apothecary than the Sanguinary Priest, just simply because of the cost of him. I mean, you put it on a Sanguinary Priest, you get really expensive. But I mean, even on a Primaris Apothecary, it's a damned expensive upgrade.
The main advantage the Apothecary has over the Sanguinary Priest is this is elite, and the other one's HQ. Yeah.
So if we're a bit tight, I mean, with the Chief Apothecary upgrade, you're looking at 115-point model. To put it on the Primaris Apothecary. That's still expensive, 115 points. So you're going to need to bring back probably, a couple of Centurions.
Couple of bikes.
Couple of bikes. 3 Sanguinary Guard to pay for that.
You're also getting the 6-up feel no pain benefit as well.
You are all getting the 6-up, and you are all getting the
ability
heals
to heal
models.
Well. Yep.
So I think with the increase in price, I think they've taken a knock back a little bit. They're still a very, very good unit, but I don't think they're quite. Go back 3 months and they were an absolute auto take. You didn't even think about it. You just stuck one. It stuck something in with Chief Apothecary. But I think with that, because that was a big jumping points, I think maybe they're not quite the auto take that they once were.
I mean, I still think they're very, very good. Like most Blood Angels lists, I would argue, have like attack bikes in them at the moment. I guess some don't, but we have enough expensive models. Even Sanguinary Guard going up to 32 points per model. If you res like 2 or 3 of them, you've got this unit's points back already. And that's before you include the Feel No Pains. We haven't done characters yet.
4 of them, haven't you? We haven't.
So
we haven't done HQs.
Yeah, so we haven't done HQs, so that makes it tricky. But I mean, I would probably still be
4 Sanguinary Guard to pay for himself. So that means you can only res 1 a turn.
That's if you consider it in raw terms of points back. If you don't consider the tactical advantage it gives you from drawing the opponent in, all this kind of stuff.
6+ is really, really nice. I do like the healing, especially if you're bringing back attack bikes at 60 points a pop. Then absolutely, he's going to make his points back quite quickly. And then, of course, like we say, we've got the 6+, which is really valuable, especially on multi-wound models. But I do think he's taken a bit of a hit from that auto take that he once was.
This is the only unit in the game that buffs the resilience of models. Everything else buffs the offensive output. This helps keep things alive. It's the only thing that does it. That makes it valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it. If I wasn't running a Sanguinary Priest, I would be running an Apothecary. So at that point, for me, then I'd probably say they're A. Then the reason being that I think that the Blood Chalice and the mobility of the Priest still gives him the edge over these guys. But like you said, if you're running Battalion, you don't have room for the Sanguinary Priest anymore, and you want to still bring the Resilience / Healer, then I think I'd probably be happy putting both the Apothecary and the Primaris Apothecary in A with the addendum there, where like if you've got the extra 5 points, because we quite often talk about like for 10 points on some models you get 1 extra wound, 1 extra.
Yeah, see,
5 points is a steal.
It is, but are you going to get the use out of them? Are you going to be using him to fight? Is he going to be taking the hits, or could you use those 5 extra points giving one of John's happy little Inferno pistols somewhere else? I'd rather keep it cheap and cheerful and take the cheapest firstborn Apothecary that I could.
See, I like that 5 wounds because that means that things like Phobos captains with complicated upgrades and sniper rifles can't kill him in a shot.
Yeah, I see many of those really.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the question is, where do they land for you then, Mark?
I totally agree that they're A.
Yeah, both of them.
In a game where tactically it's all about sitting on objectives and staying alive as long as you can, anything that boosts the resilience of your units is invaluable.
Are you happy with that as well?
Yeah, I don't. Please don't misunderstand. I don't dispute that they are absolutely A. It's just I think if you go back 4 months, they were probably S.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say.
And I personally think the Primaris one's a little bit better than the normal one.
Even back then, there'd have been a couple of facts that kept it off S, and that would have been that the Sanguinary Priest buffs are Assault Doctrine, which is invaluable, and it also gets a jump pack option that these two don't get.
Oh no, the Sanguinary Priest is better. Yeah, definitely. But I don't think that makes these guys worse. It just means if you've got the spare HQ slot, you probably take the same price.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's very fair. Okay, cool. We did a twofer, right? We got to do some more twofers tonight to keep the thing sane. All right, so next, you know what? We should probably do these two at the same time. We've got Bladeguard Ancient and Bladeguard Veterans. And the Ancient, I guess, is going to have the same problem as the other Ancient that we've just looked at. But yeah, let's see if we can. Why don't we start quickly on
Bladeguard Ancient's a little bit better.
Okay, then why don't you kick off in the Bladeguard Ancient then?
No, okay. If I'm going to take an Ancient, it'll either be the Sanguinary Ancient or it'll be this one. And the reason for that is the Deeds of Heroism ability that he's got. So he's not just buffing with the buffing when you die, you get 50% chance of killing stuff. You've got the +1 to your attack hit roll, which is always good. It'll benefit whoever he's nearby to buff if he's assuming you're going to be holding anything in the mid-table, if you're going to be foot slogging him, because he's got no mobility buffs to give him.
Yeah, it's a strange one for me, though, that you don't get to take a power sword on him or the mastercrafted power sword. Like, I would feel like he's a lot more valuable if you could have the sword, but that's just my opinion. What do you think, Tony?
I think he's shit. Yeah, well, I'm being.
Yeah, you're not wrong. He's just marginally less shit than the last one.
He's 15 points cheaper than the last one and gets one less armor save. And
gets bigger buffs.
He's got bigger buffs, but he's worse in combat because he doesn't get the power fist. So, I mean, he's a Bladeguard Ancient without any blades or any real ability to guard anything. You know, if you had one or the other, you could give him a storm shield or a sword. That'd make sense. I mean, I got this new Dominion box the other day, and here's their Ancient. Look, got a sword.
I was going to say,
because he needs one.
You can't score him down because he's named badly. I know we're looking in isolation, but we're not looking at model names. But yeah, I agree.
I thought that was a good idea. He's got bugger all offensive output. He's got less offensive output than than the Terminator one.
Yeah, I'm still.
He's got less survivability in a save point of view, but yes, you could if you really wanted to transhuman him. Although you've probably got, if you bring in him, you've probably got some Blade Guard. You probably want to use it on them. So he's slightly less survivable. He's slightly less killy. He's 15 points less. He's still shit.
Yeah. So is he a D or is he a C from either of you?
He's a D from me.
He's higher than the last one, but yeah, he's still a D.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and with that, let's get fired straight into the Blade Guard then.
To the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, I use the Blade Guard in pretty much every game. I run a minimum size unit, but I think that, you know, like I see some people run 4 and I see some people run 5. I actually think 4 is a great number for these guys. I think the Neo Volkite pistol is actually an okay upgrade for 5 points. I much prefer it to a plasma pistol, you know, because you get the 2 shots and 2 damage and potentially mortal wounds. So if you want to do that on your sergeant, you know, I have no problem with that. I see quite a few people run Quake bolts on the Blade Guard sergeant, which makes sense as well. But I think for 105 points, I always seem to compare them to the Vanguard Veterans, you know, like, and because they get that transhuman, and if you keep them under a squad of 5 and it's just a 1 CP transhuman, they can be very, very survivable. They can do a good amount of damage output. I guess the one thing that just lets them down is the 6-inch move, which I actually don't think is a problem for Blood Angels. If you want to use them to head centerboard, just advance them in turn 1, and then I don't really have an issue getting them centerboard. So, yeah, Mark, why don't you jump in first on Blade Guard?
It took me a long time to come around to the benefits of these guys. I was really dubious of them at first, but now I can't see myself writing a competitive list without including them. They are just that good at what they do, and what they do is critical at holding objectives and staying there, being resilient through the save, through the wounds, through the transhuman, through the buffs they're getting from an apothecary, which you've taken because you just discussed you taking apothecaries. Their offensive output is amazing. They are perfectly synergized with Blood Angels in having strength 4 with a power sword to buff them to strength 5, and then +1 to wound on the charge or first round of combat means that they're going to be wounding things on 3s and 2s most of the time, if not all the time. Damage 2 is good against those vast majority of things, which, aside from the few things that it isn't. The shooting is irrelevant. They're dirt cheap. They're brilliant.
Just 3 points more per model against Sanguinary Guard, and, you know, 1 more wounded and an invulnerable save. That's 3 points we would take all day long, isn't it?
The 4 pin run save can't be overstated. It's just amazing.
Okay, what about you, Tony?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you guys. I really like them. I think they're really good. I like running them in a unit of 5.
Same.
In the rare occasion, if you wanted to put them in a transport, you could, and then you could bring a friend. I like 5 because then you don't have any coherency problems. You can still with that 1 CP transhuman, and it's such a big unit with the 4+ involved. It makes them absolute buggers to kill. The Volkite pistol, I like it. I love Volkite stuff. I think it's cool. For 5 points, but it is 5 points. It's not bad. If you got spare, you could spend it in worse places. I'd never take the plasma pistol because I'd end up sniping my own sergeant out of the squad. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. They're great.
Okay, so where do you put them then?
For me, I'm thinking, I wish they were a bit faster, or we had a slightly better way of getting them around.
That
That's the
exists as well,
only
though.
criticism that I have for them. Yeah, because if they were a bit faster, they'd be broken.
That exists. It's all trade-offs.
It is all trade-offs. Or if they were in Gravis, they'd be broken as well. With toughness 5. But then I suppose they're even slow, wouldn't they? So yeah, are they S tier? They might be S tier.
Yeah, they're S2.
Yeah, I think I agree with that because yeah, they're in every single one of my lists. There's no want to drop them. You know, they provide a lot of value. They always seem to do what you need them to do. So cool.
And they come with built-in halos as well, of course.
They're cool models, and I think that should bump them up a little bit, even though I don't actually have any in my current list.
All right, next up then is our Assault Centurion, who is an expensive boy, I guess at 55 points with the Flamers. Put Meltas on them for like 65 points. You could put Hurricane Bolters on them, making them another 10. I obviously run some of these guys in my list, so why don't we throw it over to you, Tony, first.
How about you go first? You got experience running them recently, John. Maybe you should pitch in first on this one.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I'm in two minds about them, right? Because, and I've been in two minds about them for a while, because I think that if you manage to get an Overwatch off with the Flamers, you know, it's fairly decent, 66 shots, right? And I try and put them center board with the Bladeguard Veterans, I guess, like sort of like that strategy about overloading threats, right? So I have a squad of 3 Centurions probably and 3 Bladeguard Veterans holding the middle or holding an objective near the middle for Oath of Moment points. I don't put any of the upgrades on them because I already think at 55 points per model that's expensive enough. It does tie in really nicely if we're going to have like a 6+ save or a 5+ invulnerable save that I sometimes give them, and also resurrecting them at 55 points a model is also very good. The siege drills are much better than the aggressor counterpart, right? And the reason that they're much better is because there's no -1 to hit on the siege drills. It doesn't matter that you're not core, I guess, so you still hit on, you know, you hit on 3s with your drills as opposed to those power fists on the aggressors hitting on 4s. And then you pretty much wound anything on 2s, right? Because you're going to be strength 10 with a +1 to wound. So, and then once we get past turn 3, you're -5. So arguably, unless they've got an invulnerable save, there's no save. And they help against Death Guard, I guess. And I play Death Guard quite a lot because of the 3 damage. But quite often I get to the end of the game and feel like the Centurion's underwhelmed. And I think that my thought about that is they're kind of like that distraction Carnifex for me, right? Like quite often people put a lot of emphasis on killing the Centurions just because they realize that the drills will melt them if they get close. And then sometimes I think that's their value that they die. But hearing both you guys talk about 5-man Blade Guards makes me, you know, like, it just makes me think, like, should I just be running 5-man Blade Guard and drop a couple of Centurions? But yeah, I mean, you've obviously seen some of my games, so why don't you go first, Mark? What do you think of them?
So the role you want to be taking these in, they're resilient, slow infantry who pack a punch. So straight away they're competing with aggressors and Blade Guard, which is fine. They punch really, really hard, which is great. They're slow, which is annoying. But the thing that swings it for me is they don't have the invuln. They can be granted an invuln save, which is all well and good. But Blade Guard coming with a 4-up invuln just makes them so valuable right out the door. The game, to score points, killing your enemy is good. But to score points, you need to be holding the objectives. And to hold the objectives, you need to be able to survive. And if you're taking a slow, resilient infantry unit, then you want them to be the best they can be at surviving. And these sacrifice the level of resilience that they could have for their offensive capability, which is great, but you got to get them into combat, which means they've got to move fast. And they don't move fast, they're more expensive, they're not as resilient as Blade Guard. They'll hit harder when they get there, but tactically, I don't see as much use for them.
Well,
I think that's pretty fair. What do you think, Tony?
I quite like them, especially when I compare them. I know, but you can stick them up against aggressors, and they cost 15 points more than an aggressor. They've got a better melee attack because they don't have the -1 to hit. They do more damage. All right, they lose core, but they don't really need it. They're toughness 5, which I like a lot. I put a lot of stock in higher toughness. They've got 4 wounds, which is quite nice because it doesn't divide up so neatly with 3 wound weapons, 3 damage weapons, which is quite neat. They've got a decent number of attacks. You've got Sergeant in there with an extra attack. I don't think I'd bother with any of the upgrades because I think they're too expensive, really. They're not bad. I think they can be good in some builds. They are very scary. And if you do want something to be a bit scary and people don't want to get close to, these are definitely it. And a little squad of these with flamers can be a decent deterrent from people charging in the midfield. Or you can stick a cocking great big unit of them in a Land Raider Crusader and just...
And that's half your army right there.
Yeah, but...
You're not taking much else, really, though, are you?
But yes, you could do that. If you really wanted to really make sure something was going to die, you could put a big old unit of these on a Land Raider Crusader, drive it up and smack them in the face.
When you absolutely positively have to kill every mother in the room.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
yeah, I don't think they're bad at all.
So not bad is a B?
Yeah, I can't argue putting them any higher than B. I don't think they're a C.
They're not a C. I don't think I could really legitimately say they were an A. So I put them in B.
Yeah, I think
They are useful.
They are good. They're just, again, they suffer a little bit in that there's often things that are better at doing what you might want to do with them.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right there. I think if I had aggressors with flamers, I might run aggressors because I think you hit the nail right on the head, Mark, is that they do not survive because of the lack of invulnerable save, and you don't really want to have to be dedicating your psychic powers every turn to be like, oh well, invulnerable save these guys. You know, you can, but yeah.
The most competitive lists take their competitiveness out of efficiency and points. Every point you pay for every single model, every ability, every stat in there has to be useful to get the most out of it, and they're too expensive.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
they are expensive. Yeah. Okay. Next up then is our Company Ancient, and this guy's going to suffer pretty much the same as our other 2 ancients. So I don't think there's much
to be a pretty quick one. This isn't it?
dive into here. He's got a 3+ save. He's got 4 wounds. Do you want to just rate him straight off?
He's cheap as shit than the last shit we looked at, but
Yeah, but he's worse shit than the last shits we've looked at as well. He's
got
got
nice
less
weapon
wounds,
options.
he's got less save. You can stick a combi weapon on him, which is not useless, but we're really clutching at straws now, aren't we? If we're looking, oh, look at that, I can put a combi melter on this guy. He's shit, isn't he?
even the fact you can take him without being an elite if you really want to
You could.
is useful, but you're still not going to do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, stick him straight down in dunce tier.
He's still 75 points. When you were saying he was
Not
cheap,
cheap,
I was...
is he?
No, he's not that cheap.
He's
Which is
cheaper.
comparatively cheap. It's
Yeah.
10 points less than the Bladeguard one, and at least he can carry a blade. So actually, in melee, he's better.
Okay, so
So the
he's...
Bladeguard Ancient is not as good as the normal guy at blading things.
So, in terms of where does he land? Is he worse than the Bladeguard or is he worse than the Terminator?
He's probably better than both the ones in there at the moment.
Yeah, the fact that you can take him without taking up a slot bumps him up a bit, though.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we are grasping
Not that you
at
should do it.
Yeah,
straws
still never going to take him.
a little bit. Next up, we're using this model, this Forge World Captain, as our Company Champion.
Okay.
And the Company Champion is a little bit interesting because he does have actually chapter upgrades you can pay for 15 points to give him more attacks. He can carry basically a combat shield. He has a bunch of different options. I'll get him up if you want to start on this one, Tony.
I like this guy. I think that he's a decent spend of 55 points, although I think that the company upgrade for him, the company champion upgrade for 15 points is an absolute steal. Yeah, he gets a lot for that 15 points. He gets the extra attack in there. He gets... Oh, what else does he get? I'm just scrolling down to
+1
So he
against
gets
characters.
Yeah, +1 against... every time a melee attack's made against him, you subtract 1 from the hit roll. Character units, or against character units, re-roll the wound roll. Gets an extra point of attacks. Gets an extra point of leadership. That's a bargain for 15 points, that is. The special relic you can give him, the Braid of Triumph, is not bad. +3 strength, AP -3, damage 3. That's not a bad relic. I probably wouldn't give it to him. I think there's other things that I would do. But
his Warlord trait is what makes him really interesting.
Yeah, his Warlord trait is excellent, isn't it? That's the so Warlord trait allowing him to re-roll charges within 6 means if you're going to stick something in a drop pod and charge out of it, something like Death Company without jump pack, something like that, he's a great thing to stick along for the ride.
As a force multiplier, he's actually got tactical uses.
He does, and even on his own, weapon skill 2+, you can put. He's got a decent weapon. That mastercrafted power sword is not bad, especially for us with our +1 to wound. You're wounding most things on 3s or 4s. That's pretty good. You're hitting on a 2+. You've got 5 attacks if you take the upgrade. I think he's a really decent unit, and just to top it off, doesn't take up a slot, or cannot take up a slot,
and can heroically intervene for 6 inches.
Can heroically intervene.
And can fight first against enemy characters as well. 55 points. This guy's...
He's dirt cheap. Yeah, he's really good.
Really good value. He's the same cost as one of those Centurions that we don't mind.
Yeah, I actually really liked Armour Indomus on this guy because that gives him the 2+ save, which with his combat shield gives him the 1+ save. And then the 5+ invulnerable save, and it gives him an extra wound. And I think that if looking at his stat line, that's the one thing that jumps out at me, just 4 wounds. So putting up 5 wounds.
He's got one downside, unfortunately, and that is that you can't give him a jump pack. If he could, then he'd be right up there straight away.
Yeah.
The single fact that you can't means that he's got to be getting into melee. He's got to be getting into melee to make use of his rerolls, which means you need a delivery method, which means you need to be running him in a transport or a drop pod or something to be able to get him in there.
Yeah, or reserve, I guess.
He's got restrictions. That's
it's
the
not a bad
only
thing
downside.
to have hanging back behind your your blade guards and things like that. Because then if somebody gets a bit too close to him, he can heroically intervene, he can strike first. So having him hang back behind your blade guard, protected by the character protection, and giving rerolls to them to charge, I think is not a bad thing to do.
Yeah. If you want offensive character support, you do a lot worse than this guy.
Yeah, I think I would be willing to put this guy in the A slot. What about you guys? Mark?
Yeah, he's an A for me.
Below the Apothecaries, but yeah, I could see him being an A.
Okay, cool.
Plus, that's a badass model. Love that model.
Okay, next up we've got Company Veterans, and again, I guess if you have the chapter champion that we've just looked at, then you can have the veterans, a squad of them for free. And I guess where we currently stand with the veterans, obviously,
not quite how it works. I think you can take any company unit for free, as in not taking up a slot in the elites or in your force org chart. Obviously, they still cost points, but you've got to take a captain in your squad, if I recall correctly, in your army.
You do. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, you need a captain to get him to take him without a slot.
And then that also spills over to Company Ancient, Company Champion, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, right. Sorry, I've got this backwards. Yes, the champion that we just looked at, if you have a squad of company veterans, which are free for taking the captain, or the free force organization slot, then you can have the company champion as a free one as well. So he can. Yeah. So basically, you could put him as your 7th elite if you were using a battalion or something. However, company veterans next, and company veterans I think are pretty interesting. They have the bodyguard rule, which is obviously really nice, especially if eliminators are going to get to become a little bit more popular. And I guess in the current meta, then they can obviously have Storm Shields and Lightning Claws at +8 points per model, which is probably arguably the most cost-effective way that you're going to create melee monsters out of them. Tony, how do you feel about veterans?
I do like them. I don't particularly like the Lightning Claw Storm Shield combo, because I think even with the Lightning Claw Storm Shield combo, they're not really melee monsters. Being a bit slow, that makes them sort of 28 points a model. They don't have the jump pack, so they're not quite Vanguard vets. I really think that their real benefit is either run them clean and naked or cheap as you can, maybe chuck the Storm Shield and use them for doing actions, or alternatively keeping them as that bodyguard rule. So I personally prefer just to stick a Storm Shield on them, sometimes maybe even put a ranged weapon on them, and just have them sitting on places, shooting at things, and just generally meaning that with Storm Shield, people have got to commit sort of whole squads to try and killing one. And I think that's their real sort of benefit, rather than them having any real damage output themselves. But that said, I do like them. I think that 20 points a model is fair. 24 with the Storm Shield for cheap. Yeah, I think they're pretty good.
Okay. And what about you, Mark?
I think these are absolutely wonderful. I very recently bought a box of 10 Tactical Marines to convert into Company Veterans just for these guys. And the reason for that is tactical benefits they can bring if you're playing the game and you're playing the objectives. The reason why is you can have a unit of these, assuming you take a captain, and you're probably taking a captain in your army. Not necessarily, but probably. To have a unit outside the Force Org chart, which is great. You can have a squad of 2 for 40 points, which is great. You can have, in the 2,000 points for an army, you can have three of the same data sheets. You can have 2 elite slots, 1 non-elite slot of these. So you could have 3 squads of 2 men. That's going to be, 120 points? Yeah, which is fine. They could be either naked, at which point I'd run them double chainsword, because making the most of Blood Angel synergies, you want to be running them with melee abilities rather than shooting necessarily. And then you can put them into Strategic Reserve for 1 CP for all 3 units, because that comes to 9 power level, and 1 CP covers 9 power level worth going into Strategic Reserves. And then you've got 3 units that can pop out over the course of the game into whatever quarter you want, wherever on the board you want, do actions, sitting in quarters to fulfill engage on all fronts, just sit on an objective, hide behind some walls somewhere for 120 points. Or 5 points more per model if you want to give them Storm Shields to make them just that bit more annoying to shift. I think these guys are fucking brilliant. I'm surprised I don't see them run more often.
No, I mean, it's certainly a good point. And I mean, if you come up against an army of snipers, then you should just choose to have one squad of these hang out against some characters that you need as well, right?
Or just leave 2 men in the back of your board sitting on objective.
Yeah,
it's going to be real easy to hide 2 little men. Real easy.
Yeah, so what do we think on where do you want to put them then, Mark?
I'd put them in A. Below Bladeguard, but I'd put them in
A. You mean S?
I meant S. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. And what about you, Tony?
I think they're an A for me. I don't think they're quite good enough to be an S, but I definitely think they're a solid A, sitting there with their mate, the company champion, and the Apothecary. But not the Ancient, because he doesn't fit in the squad.
Space Marines are by nature an elite army. You have few models for the points that you get for them. A chance to have some units, I think, is too valuable to pass up for not a lot of points.
I think the downside to that is you've got to have that captain for that extra, for that. Otherwise, you start and use up your elite slots that you haven't got that many spare of. I don't run a captain, so for me, I wouldn't give up one of my elite slots for these guys. If I did run a captain, then I'd maybe consider it.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess here's the thing: a lot of people run Dante, and I guess there's a stupid rule that Dante doesn't count as a captain. Whereas, like, if you have a captain upgraded to a chapter master, he does count. I mean, they need to unify that rule. He
doesn't have
really.
the captain keyword. Mark.
Yeah, which is really dumb.
And for some reason, they haven't FAQ'd that back in.
I think we'll put them at the bottom of S. For me,
I'm happy to bung them in the top of A, given what you've argued with there. I've got no problem with that.
Okay, top of A then. And I think
you're right. He doesn't have captain, does he?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's ridiculous.
I don't know why he doesn't have captain.
I suppose his bodyguard is technically Sanguinary Guard, so that might be a fluff reason.
Well, if it is a fluff reason, then give Sanguinary Guard the bodyguard wording, and then I'm happy. Because when we used to have them as Honor Guard, that was their whole thing, right? Okay, next up then we've got Contemptor Dreadnought, and I guess like we're just looking at the regular Contemptor. I think we're going to do a second video or another video on Forge World units. So today it's just the Contemptor, and why don't you start on that, Tony?
I don't exactly hide it, but I fucking love Dreadnoughts. The reason I don't have half the things we've talked about so far is because I've spent all my points on Dreadnoughts. But but I think that the Contemptor might be one of the weaker choices. I like the 5+ invuln, but as we've talked about before, to get to that 5+ invuln, you've got to be hit with something with a fair amount of AP already. I like the 9 wounds, that's pretty tasty. I like the movement of 8, that's pretty tasty. What I'm not so keen on is the weapons options. I think the Cares Pattern Assault Cannon is great if you need to kill a lot of ATVs, but rubbish if you're fighting land speeders. I think the multi-melter's not bad. It's a multi-melter. We like multi-melters. They're good. Slightly swingy damage. But it's 150 points. And if you're just looking for kind of damage output per point, he doesn't actually maths out quite as well as your bog standard regular Dreadnought. And if you look at survivability per point, he doesn't quite match out quite as well as the regular Dreadnought, except against things like las cannons. So for that reason, I think that we're going to talk about Forge World later on, because the Relic one is basically better, although it's got a CP tax on him. So yeah, I think that he's a pretty good choice. I really like that movement 8. And I really like that 9 wounds.
And no degrading
I don't
profile.
think he's top tier. And no degrading profile. So, but I just don't think he's quite as good as some of the other options in our Dreadnought selection box.
Go for it, Mark.
So this is the toughest Dreadnought that we can run without a degrading profile, which gives it a strong plus in the sort of reckoning for me. The only thing I would wish for it would be that it had more versatility in the weapons it could carry. I've got no issue with it having a Dreadnought combat weapon. I'm really happy that it does. The multi-melter is good. The assault cannon's meh. I'd love to see more options, but again, we can have a version of this with more options. It just costs us CP to do so in the Forge World variant that Tony mentioned. I like him. He's good. But I'm not running him. And it's kind of hard to pin that on a problem with the unit as much as the fact that Elites is such a crowded slot with so many things that we like that it's really hard fitting the Contemptor in without wanting to get more bang for my buck.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think you can get a little bit more bang for your buck in places. I guess that's why we see Relic Contemptors, etc. But regardless, I guess if we come back to scoring the Contemptor.
Oh, hang on, I was wrong. Sorry, before someone in the comments corrects this, because they will.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's not a normal assault cannon, it's the Cares one. So it is actually equally as good at killing land speeders and ATVs.
You did
Good
call
point.
it a Carries assault cannon.
good
I
point.
did, but I, for some reason, forgot that that gets an extra
It's
point.
an extra strength. Yeah, I think you're right, though. It just doesn't quite... like, if you think about, like, how many multi-meltas can we field for 150 points? Well, we can field a lot more than one. And I think that's what's got against this, right?
You put it on a resilient platform, it's nice, it's got core, it's got the damage reduction, it's got the combat weapon, but
It's not bad. It's a good,
if I want to be fielding
unit.
a melter platform, then I want to field a platform that will specialise in melter stuff rather than kind of a bit of an all-rounder.
Yeah, so I think this probably goes in similar to my Centurions. It's a B. Like, it's not a horrible
Exactly
choice.
what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, I think
agree with
B's
that.
fair.
Above or below the Centurions? That's a tough question, actually.
It's pretty on a par, to be honest. I think depends what else you've got running, isn't it? If you're running things like Apothecaries and Sanguinary Priests, then your Centurions are suddenly a lot better. But if you're running Tech Marines, then maybe your Contemptor Dreadnought's a better choice.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave them. We'll say that they're about even. We'll see where the next... this is a glorious model, though. I really like whoever painted this. I just found it on Google image search, so...
That is a lovely model.
Alright, so we're straight into the regular Dreadnought next. And I guess the regular Dreadnought, correct me if I'm wrong here, is 120 points. And... yeah, why don't you jump in then, Tony, because you were just speaking about this guy.
Yeah. So as I said, I fucking love Dreadnoughts. Look, I've got one here. Look, there. This is an old 2nd edition one, and one of the people off of our Discord actually sent me his missing banner. Although I haven't had time to put him on there yet, and I'm super excited. So I am sorry I haven't fitted it yet, but I will. I promise.
That actually looks really good because I got so many of those metal banners that were all ski whiff, like all bent and stuff.
I found this in a box somewhere, but it didn't have a banner, and I was really upset. And I was trying to make one, and I just couldn't get it to look right. So Bashiko on our Discord sent me that all the way from the States.
Oh wow, what a champion!
Yeah, so regular Dreadnought then. 120 points, comes with an assault cannon. This is the one that's shit at killing land speeders because it's only strength 6. I've been quite harsh on these in the past, apart from the looks, which I think are cool. They look fat boys. If you look right back in the fluff, the reason that they were so much shorter and smaller than the Contemptor was they were supposed to be so that they could get through the corridors for like Space Hulk and attacking ship-to-ship combat, which I think is quite cool. That's why they're so much shorter, and I think that's quite cool. Now, toughness 7, same as that Contemptor. 1 wound less, but quite a lot of points left. Now, you can give him a multi-melter for 5 points. That takes him up to 125 points. So he's 25 points less than the Contemptor. You lose 2 inches of movement, you lose a wound, and you lose the 5+ invuln. So when you start playing with the numbers and stuff, and you start working out per 100 points, he's slightly more durable against anything that's not more than sort of basically more than strength 7. Well, sorry, more than sort of strength 8, strength 9. He's slightly more durable point for point. And for damage output, because he's so much cheaper, got the same number of attacks and the same weapon, he does slightly more damage, although he can't get there quite so easily. So I think that actually works out in his favour. I probably wouldn't bother with a lot of the weapons options. Most of them are far too many points. The Twin Las Cannon is ridiculously expensive. The Heavy Flamer can be nice if you've got spare 5 points, just as a bit of a charge deterrent. I certainly wouldn't swap out for the missile launcher. I think that the benefit of this guy is the fact that he can punch things, even though he's a bit slow. I certainly wouldn't bring the assault cannon, though, because it's awful. So, yeah, I think he's all right. He's not good, but I think he's all right.
Can I just throw in that I didn't realise that the last Dreadnought didn't have the smokescreen keyword, but this guy does as well. Not that, I mean, you might want to smokescreen him.
You might.
Situational play, I guess. Mark, what do you think about the regular Dreadnought?
I think this one's about the same level of interest as the last one to me. One thing we haven't mentioned before is that Dreadnoughts as a whole have got a stratagem that can be played on them that makes them a captain for a phase or a lieutenant for a phase, which is really cool. Just having the flexibility to pull a reroll 1 Zora as and when you need it is great, and is a great reason to take Dreadnoughts. This one compared to the last one feels very similar because it loses a little bit in toughness but gains a little bit in offensive flexibility, which is nice. If I'm going to run one or the other, then I think I'm going to run a Dreadnought because I want it to be strong and striding and tough and take the firepower, make the use of the Duty Eternal. So I would rather pay the extra points and have it be an extra wound, a little bit harder to kill than the other one. Then again, the argument to say you could have more Dreadnoughts for your points compared to it is strong, assuming you've got unlimited elite slots with which to put them in, and you don't really tend to. So for me, it kind of sort of averages out to be the same sort of level as a Contemptor for me.
Okay, I think I'd be happy placing this in B, and I think I'd probably place it right around. Maybe, I think Mark thinks the Contemptor's slightly better. I think Tony thinks the regular one's slightly better. I think I'm indifferent. I think that you can field either or. I don't run enough of them.
The Contemptor is better. The Contemptor is a better thing, but it's 30 points more, and is it 30 points better is the question. Or 25 points better if we're sticking the same gun on them. And that's really the kind of decision to make on it.
Yeah, then I'd be happy to put it next to it, and it's up to you based on how many of them you fit in your list or where you want to go with it, I guess. But I think B, like, I think it's...
They're not rubbish.
Yeah. The 2 inches of move is a little bit annoying on those regular... The 2 inch less move is a little bit annoying on the regular ones, but I mean, that just is what it is. I mean...
At the same speed as the Bladeguard.
Yeah.
Which we said earlier didn't really matter about the 6 inch move.
True.
I don't entirely agree with that. I think the 8 inches is really, really good, but if you're just going to walk it up to the middle field...
6 inches is serviceable. 8 inch move is great.
Yeah. Okay, alright, then let's leave them in B, and we'll move into the Tactical Warsuit. And again, this is a glorious painted one, with some Death Company bits off the arms, I think. I think those are the shields off regular Dreadnought.
Bit. That's the leg bit. It goes around the foot on the Death Company set. So if you want to build it as a Death Company, it goes around the lower leg.
Yeah, because that's the bit I've got in the front of my Chapter Master bike, so that's super awesome. Whoever did this, big props. But Tactical Warsuits for me, I've tried these guys a few times. I don't own any. I proxied them a few times because they're the same size as the Redemptor. I never felt like they worked with the strategies that I play, but you guys know I play quite defensively. So have either of you guys experienced with Tactical Warsuits? How do you feel about them? Mark, do you want to go first?
I've always stayed away from them. I want to like them. They've got such potential being a sneaky dreadnought, for Christ's sake. I mean, really? The idea of deploying them wherever you want to is great. They've got wonderful defensive potential. The Flamer's good. Stack them up with guns as much as you want. They've got a melee weapon to boot. They're not the most resilient things in the world, but equally so, they're not bad either. The thing is, if you want to make use of these in a competitive list, you want to make use of everything they can do, and that is using their concealed positions, because you're paying a lot of points for the concealed positions, the ability to deploy them right up against your opponent's line. At which point, you're gambling on a 50-50 dice roll for who goes first turn or not. And if you lose, then they're going to get shot to bits or charged, and your opponent gets to catapult forwards and charge and consolidate off them. And if you win, then you get to do some damage. And for me, that kind of gamble is not what I'm interested in a competitive list.
I'd agree with that, yeah. How about you, Tony?
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem with them, really. Some of the chapters think that Ultramarines get that redeploy stratagem, and then it's much less of a gamble. I think they could work. So you took 3 of them, you stick them right up, maybe bring a load of Incursors along as well, and you deploy your entire army 9 inches away from your opponent. And if you get first turn, then you're going to mulch them. If you get second turn, then they're all going to be dead, and you're not going to have anything left to do it with. I don't personally like to play that way. I like the firepower.
Game, really, is it? No.
It's not. I like the firepower. They've got a decent amount. The Iron Hail Stubber annoys Mark, and that gives it bonus points for me. The auto cannon also annoys Mark, and that gives it bonus points. And the Incendium cannon's a big flamethrower, so you can't argue with that. So they've got really great weapons options, especially for guns. The Invicta Fist is nice. It's basically a Dreadnought close combat weapon, but because they've got a little bit less... Oh, they've got strength 7, so they're fine. The thing for me is if they were 9 wounds, so didn't degrade, and then cost a decent chunk less, because they're 13 at the moment, to say, I don't know, 130, 140 points, then I think that'd be a really good choice, because you could sit them back and you could use them as fire support. Or if you wanted something to back up, maybe, and you wanted to put your infiltrators, so against a different opponent, so maybe a shootier opponent, you could put them there and they could be a little bit of a support for your infiltrators. But they're not. They're 160 points, and that's a lot of points for something that's probably going to die, or even if it doesn't, it's going to degrade a lot. And then it's not going to have nearly that damage output if you don't get turn 1 to use it. So yeah, I think they're too many points to be a good choice at the moment.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There isn't even any way we can redeploy these, right? Because the Warlord, Lord of Deceit, only lets you redeploy Phobos, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so even though these guys came in the Phobos set, they don't have the Phobos
And the problem
keyword.
with Lord of Deceit as well is that you do the redeploy before the roll off the first turn, which is annoying.
I didn't actually realise that. I never picked Lord of Deceit. Okay.
It never used to. It didn't work that way in 8th edition, but they changed it for 9th ed.
in 8th, these were great because you knew you were going first, and I'd bring 3 and I'd sit them 9 inches away and shoot and charge on turn 1.
So I guess based on the fact that they're only 20 points less than the Redemptor Dreadnought, and we've basically decided that we can't really use their concealed positions effectively. So for your 20 points in your Redemptor Dread, what do you get? You know, you get a lot more firepower, you get an additional toughness, you get that Duty Eternal, which these guys don't have. I feel like these guys are like C at best.
Absolute best. I can't see any argument for including them in the list.
Okay, so you think D then, or are you okay with C? And what about you, Tony?
I don't think they're D. They're not as bad as Sanguinary Ancient. I'd definitely take them before I took one of those.
I suppose in a pinch they could actually kill something.
They can kill. They have got quite a lot of killing. They're just a bit overcosted and whatnot. And I think if you wanted something you could deploy maybe a little bit further forward, or maybe you wanted something to support your infiltrators, then there is a use case scenario for them. If you've gone heavy on Phobos, then that could be something quite nice to back up. Maybe you've got a Phobos captain as well, something like that, and you can build this sort of little castle out in the midfield. And that's not too bad for that. So I think they're a C.
Bottom of C seems reasonable with that. I'll go with that.
Okay, cool. Next up then, Ironclad Dreadnought. And do you know what? This is one that we've talked a lot about in Discord, actually, and I personally really like it. And if I was going to run it, I would run it with 2 heavy flamers, so that like it's very difficult to charge. I'd almost replace my Centurions with this, right? Because it comes in at 145 points. You can run it with 2 heavy flamers. I'd remove the Hurricane Bolter and I'd run it with the combat weapon and also the Chain Fist. And the reason that you'd run the combat weapon is if the model's equipped with 2 melee weapons, then you get to reroll any hit rolls of 1. I would do most of my attacks with the Chain Fist, so that's basically strength 12 -4, 2d3 damage, and a flat 6 against enemy vehicles. And then obviously it's very difficult to charge, toughness 8. I was actually thinking, like previously when I was running my Psyker with Might of Heroes, this guy does have the core keyword as well, so you could use Might of Heroes on him and make him toughness 9, making very difficult against all the anti-meltifier that's running around at the moment. So I like the Ironclad Dreadnought. I did just because we're going to come on to the Death Company Dreadnought in a little bit. I did actually do some math hammer on the Ironclad versus the Death Company Dreadnought, and Death Company Dreadnought has 1 less toughness and a 6+ feel no pain, and that does edge him ever so slightly over the Ironclad, but they are very, very similar. What about you, Mark? Do you want to jump in on the Ironclad?
This has got a lot of potential. The baked-in rerolls of 1 for twin combat weapons is wonderful. It doesn't degrade, which is great. It's built for melee, which is exactly what Blood Angels do best. Yeah, everything you said sounds good to me. I'm happy with that.
Okay, I mean, there's some other things I suppose I missed. Assault launchers, but I typically don't pay the points for the assault launchers. I feel like he's probably going to survive if he's going to charge you anyway.
It's a 5-point opportunity to spend a CP on something, which you're probably not going to do. You're using it offensively rather than defensively, something like this.
Yeah, and how do you feel about the Ironclad, Tony?
I literally just bought one. It's still in the cellophane. That.
You get bonus points.
How are you going to build it? How are you going to build it, Tony?
Well, now it might come as a surprise to you, but I fucking love Dreadnoughts.
Really? I did not know that.
I really, really, really want to put the Seismic Hammer on him. Now, I've done some maths, and to be honest, it's not as good as the Chain Fist. The Chain Fist, it's got 2d3, so it's going to average about 4 damage per hit. Can be a little bit swingy, but we'll say 4. The Seismic Hammer's got 5, but the Chain Fist doesn't have -1 to hit and gets bonus against
swing it for me straight away.
And it's the -1 to hit that means that the Chain Fist, I think, is better. I can't see him getting in many situations where he gets to punch a vehicle. He is not a fast boy. He is a slow boy, so he's not going to catch anything and chasing after a rhino. Come back so I can smite thee. Yeah, I really, really like him. The same as you, I'd stick the heavy flamers on him. I'm going to stick an Ironclad combat weapon. I'm going to stick a Dreadnought Chain Fist, and I'm going to run him forward. And for 140 points or so is what it will cost. I think that the opponent knows full well they don't want to get him in combats. But with toughness 8, duty eternal, He's going to be an absolute bugger to kill.
It's the
Especially
toughness
when I've
8
got-
that makes him. It really
Yeah,
is.
especially when I've got Tech Marine putting 3 wounds on him back a turn. He's going to be... His distraction can't affect his go. The only thing that could make him better was if he was a little bit faster. Yeah, I think he's great. I really think he's great.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think I probably rate him higher than Centurions.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So
I'm not sure he's A, but he's come close. He's come very close.
I think I would put him at the bottom of A. Like I am. I mean, Tony just bought one. I'm literally on the fence. If I wasn't buying Eliminators now, I'd be buying one as well. I think he's 100% on my wish list. So because he's on my wish list, I think bottom of A.
I'm cool with that.
You okay with that, Tony?
Yeah, I'll go bottom of A as well. I think he's a bit situational. If you've got the backup in your army to support him, or you just want something big and scary to stomp
Run
up the
forward
board,
and annoy your opponent. Yeah,
run forward and annoy your opponent, then he becomes very useful. If you've already got a lot of offensive things like that, then he becomes a little bit less useful. I think the Hunter Killer's not a bad shout. I don't know if I'll bother bringing 2. But I think 1 Hunter Killer to fire off from the Devastator Doctrine for 5 points is not a bad shout.
Can you only fire off 1 a turn, or if you buy more, can you fire them all off?
I think you can only fire off 1 a turn.
No, I think you can fire them all off.
Can you? I'm not sure.
I don't believe there's any rule. It just says you could just fire it once per battle. There isn't a rule on how many you can
There's
fire.
no reason why not then.
Yeah.
You
There's
can
no
fire
reason
all
why
the
not,
ranged
yeah.
weapons you have.
So I think that's not a bad shout to stick on him. If you've got a spare couple of points floating about. Yeah, I think he's good. I think he's A tier, but probably the bottom end of it.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I really want one. I'd love to see your one when it's built. Okay, next up we've got the... I always say this wrong. It's
Judiciar.
Judiciar, thank you. And, I mean, the Judiciar was amazing in 8th edition when he came out. Oh no, it was the beginning of 9th, sorry. When he came out and he had the 6-inch fight last. It's now been nerfed to 3 inches, and I guess how people counter that in the competitive scene by taking, is it Selfless Valor Warlord trait on him, so he can heroically 6, and then make the enemies within 3 Temper Mortis to fight last. And I mean, I guess if you aren't going to run the Whirlwind, then this guy is a very interesting choice. Why don't you go first on this one, Tony?
I quite like him. I think for 85 points, I don't think he's bad at all. He's pretty good in combat. He's got that 4+ invul save in melee. He's a character, so hopefully people shouldn't be able to shoot him before then. The execution of Relic Blade is quite nice. Strength +3, AP -3, damage 2. Wound rolls a 6, give a mortal wound in addition. 2+ weapon skill, 4 attacks, 5 wounds. He's pretty good. The Temper Mortis is nice. When it was 6-inch, it was verging on broken, I think. Now it's 3 inches. I think it's good. I can see the giving him that 6-inch heroic intervention is nice, but only if you've got CP to use it.
What?
Sorry.
Why?
No, sorry. That's interrupt. Ignore me. 6-inch heroic intervention is nice, but I think I would also be tempted with the one that gives stuff around him obsec. And then I would sit in with a little unit of like maybe 3 or 4 Bladeguard around him. And then I'd say, come charge my Bladeguard and fight last. Because it's a small enough unit that they can all be within range of his 3-inch bubble.
Yeah,
so there's no way of picking one off. So I think he's pretty good.
And what about you, Mark?
Everything you've described is the reasons why I absolutely love this model. I hated it at first sight. I thought it looked bloody ugly. I didn't know what its role was. I thought its skull head was stupid with a little mask around it. And I didn't know where it fit in my army or what it did or what it's supposed to do. Apparently they're baby chaplains. They're people who want to become chaplains but haven't become it yet. And they've sworn to vow silence until they prove themselves in battle or something. And they get given a special Doctor Who weird time relic or something which could break the universe or whatever. But no, going back to the game and tactics, that is exactly what I do. I rate this guy so highly for what he can bring to mid-board control with supporting unit of Bladeguard and Apothecary nearby. The 6-inch heroic intervention warlord trait that we get as part of being Blood Angels, or we get the option to use as part of being Blood Angels, makes him wonderful. Because, and not a lot of people realise this necessarily at first, when you heroically intervene something, you do not have to end in melee range. You don't have to end in engagement. All you have to do when you heroically intervene is you have to end up closer to the closest enemy model. And that's it. So you just got to get close enough to get the enemies that you want to get within your 3-inch radius of your Temper Mortis, and they fight last. And fight last is one of the most powerful tools we have as a melee army. It is so good. It will counter charges. It means that if stuff charges you, you get to pick a unit to fight before they do. For discouraging people from coming anywhere near me, this unit is invaluable.
Yeah, I was going to say that all sounds good. I want to double. I want to double check the actual wording on Selfless Valor. So, you heroically intervene. You stay like 1.5 inches away from the enemy. You make them fight last. You activate your Bladeguard. If you're smart with your positioning, you can then potentially base their models so they can't move. Keep your Judiciar, where he could then activate and get into combat as well.
Yep.
And then they have no option of fighting him. You know, like if you're... because even if you make them fight last with the new picking mechanic, you would fight, then they would have the potential to go, so they wouldn't actually be able to pick your character because he isn't within the range. So yeah, you can do a lot with him then.
And he's no slouch in a fight either. He's good. He's good enough. He's good in a scrap.
Yeah. Brilliant then. Yeah, I mean, we basically put the Whirlwind in the S tier because of the one strat that fights last. This guy can basically do the same thing. The only one downside with this guy is he is foot slogging, so there maybe is a little bit of a negative around that. But like, I would guess, if you ask me, like if we didn't have access to the Whirlwind, I guess this guy is either A or S. What do you think, Tony?
If we didn't have access to the Whirlwind, he would be an auto take almost, I think. I definitely think he's an A. He is a little bit slow. You can stick him in an Impulsor with 5 Bladeguard, which I've seen done a couple of times, and that's not a bad thing to fly around if you want to waste the points on an Impulsor. So yeah, I think he's an A for me. He's a solid A.
Okay, and what about you, Mark?
I would love to put him in S, but as you've said, the fact that we do have access to other sources of fight last, one of which is ranged and doesn't require line of sight and can be fired from relative safety, is very useful. He's a really, really strong force multiplier for those he's around, but I'm not quite sure he's an auto take because of that. So I'd put him top A.
I was going to agree with that, and I was going to make one more point on that at the moment. I'm obviously fighting Andrew's list at the moment, and he's running 30 of those bodyguard sacrosancts, I believe they're called, Celestian. And because he's running 30 of them, they're super difficult for me to shift, and it makes my suppression fire. In some ways, it cancels the suppression fire. And when you've got characters like Morgan Val that you cannot suppress and can fight twice, I guess... I know it's very situational, but I would guess, like, if I was just fighting sisters week on week, then I guess maybe the Judiciar... Someone got a cat? Okay. Yeah, I was like, is that my house? That maybe borderline puts him in S, right? Like, the fact that the Whirlwind
is really
being
close.
Yeah.
The fact that he can work on people like Morven with that bodyguard, and nothing else we've got that can, really, except maybe the Librarian power... Can we do
Veil of Time, maybe.
Time? Yeah. Makes him even more valuable at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
He's top of A.
Part of his value to me is not just the offensive ability that he has with that, the fact that he's a deterrent. You don't want to come near him because he will intervene and he will shut you down. So you can scare people away from what you're doing, which means that they're not moving on to your objectives where he's holding.
Yeah, very true. All right, number 15, and this is going to be our Primaris Ancient. Probably suffers pretty much the same problems as all of our other Ancients, even more so in that this guy gets like a bolt rifle and a bolt pistol. So again, struggle to see how he synergizes too much with our other stuff, unless we were running very shooty infantry cores, I guess, and none of us really run shooty infantry cores from what I gather. So, do we just place him in D and move on? I mean, I'll pull up his stats real quick, but I don't think there's anything super exciting about him. Tony, do you want to jump in on the Primaris Ancient?
Do we need to? Because can't we just say, "Oh, he's D, he's shit"? Let's just leave it at it.
We can.
He is.
Yeah.
He's rubbish.
He's
I
worse
want to
than
say
the
he's better
Terminator.
than the normal one because he's got an extra wound and an extra attack. But then in return, he loses any access to any options whatsoever. So, yeah, he's shit. He's rubbish.
Is he the worst of the lot then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'd
He's
say
got
so
no
as well.
flexibility. He's not very durable. He's got no damage output. He's probably better with dealing with cats. But yeah, he's got. Why would you take him? What possible value would he have over any of the other ones? And they're already terrible.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to take him. Okay, I mean, unless we get Standard Sacrifice back and all these guys jump from D to about an A, but I guess we'll see.
Well, even then they won't because they're all too slow, and you bring one of the quick ones, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
that's
we
true.
can't plan off that.
Okay, so next up then I guess we look at the Redemptor, and I've obviously been running Redemptors quite a lot. I like them. I think they're pretty versatile. You know, they're survivable. You don't have a CP tax on them like some of the other big dreadnoughts. They put out a decent amount of firepower. I've got nothing bad to say about Redemptors. The only thing I probably got bad to say is that the plasma could be swingy. Why don't you go, Mark? What do you think of Redemptors?
So I'm a little bit bitter that Games Workshop have clearly got an agenda where they decide to make everything that's Primaris just that little bit more points efficient, just that little bit better than Firstborn, which bugs me. But I can't really let that interfere with my assessment of whether something is good or not. The Redemptor is amazing. It's really strong. The degrading profile puts me off a little bit, but it moves 8 inches on its top profile. It's really tough. It doesn't have an invan, which is a problem. But then again, you got the damage reduction to take care of that. It doesn't have flexibility in what you arm it with, really. You can just give it a lot of DACA, but ultimately you've got the choice of either the big Gatling cannon or the plasma incinerator. So you've got a choice of one or two main guns there. The fact it's got a melee weapon is great. It's really good for how it's pointed when you get right down to it. And it also synergizes really well with what you want to do, which is have a big, stompy, tough unit that can stride forward, take a bit of fire, hold an objective, use a stratagem to give it an aura of rerolls if you want to do so, be it captain rerolls or lieutenant rerolls. It's a real hard argument not to take this, and the only arguments you can think of is if you're filling your elites with other things to do a different battle plan. If you want a solid, stompy battle plan, this is one of your go-to units.
Yeah, and what about you, Tony?
Of course, I love it. It's brilliant. It's another dreadnought. It's probably the best dreadnought.
It looks like it could actually physically walk somewhere, unlike the
looks
current
like it could
dreadnought.
actually physically walk somewhere. I think really with this, the actual, it's great, and I don't think anybody's really going to dispute that. I would argue, if anything, it's a little bit too point efficient, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that too loudly in case Games Workshop bump it. We can't be dealing with any more nerfs. I think really the discussions on what you arm it with. I think the Icarus rocket pod is a little bit take or leave. It's 5 points, heavy D3, strength 7, AP -1, 2 damage. It's got blast. It's got extra damage against aircraft because, you know, Thunderhawk meta. I don't always take it, to be honest. I often run it without it. I prefer the Onslaught Gatling Cannon to the Heavy Flamer. I think the 8 shots, 24, outweighs the fact that if somebody charges you, because not many people tend to charge my Redemptors.
I'll tell you the main
Yeah,
reason
it's
why I
really
don't take it. And the main reason why I don't take it is because I like having an infantry-centric army where all my infantry buffs work against basically everything in my army, and it's a vehicle. That's it.
Yeah. I'll probably take the Macroplasma over the heavy onslaught. I do like the heavy onslaught, and I do think that it might start coming into play a little bit more often. That strength 6 makes it great at killing toughness 5 things like the new orcs or ATVs. So I'd probably there is an argument for it, but against most things, the macroplasma is going to maths out a little bit better. With that blast on it, you don't have to supercharge it. If you only need damage 2, then only have damage 2 and don't take the mortal wound. Yeah, I think they're great.
Okay. I mean, I was running 2 in my list till the points cost hike, and after talking tonight, I actually kind of thinking maybe I need to just get back to running 2. What do you? So I'm reckoning for me it's probably in the A tier.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Where about in A, and what do you think, Tony?
Below the Apothecaries, but above the other 2. I would rather take an Apothecary before I took one of these because they're just so useful, but it's really good.
I am running 2, and I'm not running any Apothecaries. Now, the reason I'm not running any Apothecaries is because I'm running 2 Redemptors and there's not a lot from the res. Or heal. So I think it's another one of those that's a little bit situational on how you're going to go. I think the old adage of bringing a lot of them or not bringing them is important.
Oh, yeah, totally. I wouldn't bring just one.
And I think that goes for most of the Dreadnoughts, except maybe the Ironclad or the Death Company that we'll come to later for similar reasons.
I think it's not just a Dreadnoughts rule. I think it's a vehicles rule more than
I think you're right. My list is very vehicle heavy, and therefore for me he is absolutely core essential. Couldn't run my list and expect to win games really without him. So that puts him right at the top end of A, even hedging into S for me. But again, that's because it synergizes with my playstyle and the things that I like to run.
Okay. I think I put him above the Apothecaries just because I run a Sanguinary Priest, and I think that's what sways me. But yeah, I mean, somewhere in the midst of A, not super great, but like pretty solid choice. A lot of people are running them, and I think I do agree with what you're saying there, where you get more value if you run more than one of them out of these units. Okay, so we're going to move, I think, straight into Reviers. And I think we'll just put them in the D tier and move on. But
no, there's an argument to not put them in the D tier. There's a solid
let's hear it.
argument not to. It's not a great one, but
they're great models. Really cool skull faces.
Cool helmets, cool names. That means they're not in the D tier. There you go then.
So I was looking at these very, very closely when I was looking at options for things to deep strike and do objectives or go into the backfield or score, engage on all fronts. And for the points, you can have a unit that will come in backfield, do a lot of attacks, potentially turn off OBSEC for a couple of CP, which is pretty useful. The Terror Troops is completely irrelevant, so you're paying points for an ability you're never going to get any real use out of. But for me, these are comparable to an Assault Squad. They're not going to hit hard, but they will hit a lot of volume of attacks if you build them to. And they're a cheap unit. You can jump in backfield to do Retrieve Octarius data or engage on all fronts for, 18 points? That's, 90 points is it? 100 points with...
100 points, yeah, with some sort of drop ability, I guess.
Or outflank with a grapnel, which lets them come in from the side as horses for courses in that case. So 100 points for deep striking unit that can then move on to slice up some enemy infantry and potentially turn off their OBSEC. Yeah, I can see a use for that. I'm probably not going to take it, but I can see a case in which it'd be useful.
Weight of fire, I guess, against weaker enemies, for example. Like I mentioned, Sisters. I guess against Sisters, you would be looking at, 30 odd attacks per model? 30 odd attacks for the 5 guys, and, the Sisters aren't going to get a particularly good save against that. You're going to win them on 2s.
We got 2 attacks. We got 1 extra for the combat knife. We got 1 on the charge, and we got 1 for Assault Doctrine if it's turn 3 or later. So
26 attacks in by my math.
That's a good amount.
Yeah. So if you think about Vanguard Vets coming with those Lightning Claws, they get 26 attacks. The difference is that Vanguard Vets are Lightning Claws, these are combat knives, but they are 50 points cheaper, which is quite a lot. You know, like they're literally a third cheaper because they're 100 points versus 150. Tony, what do you think of Reviers? I've tried them once and I found them a bit underwhelming. But maybe I think I was up against Marines, and I guess Marines AP0 is not really amazing, right?
Yeah.
I think that they're shit.
You were going to say that.
They have got 26 attacks at strength 4 is not to be sniffed at, but AP nothing, suddenly you get something to be sniffed at. Okay, so you're wounding sisters on 2s. Yeah, we wound most things on 2s or 3s anyway, so that's not a real big benefit there. But they get their full armor save as well. So all of a sudden, that's really blunted the effectiveness of that. Terror Troops is a thing. It does exist, but it's 2 CP. If it's 2 CP to win you the game, then it's worth spending that 2 CP. But I think often it probably isn't. Do they have the Melter Bombs keyword? No, they don't. So I think I'd much rather take an Assault Squad, to be honest.
Which is actually interesting, right?
Yeah, I think the Assault Squad's better, and I didn't think they were that good. They're 76-inch moves, so yes, they can teleport down and then not go anywhere.
Well, you can guerrilla tactics them.
You could guerrilla tactics them. They could take them off the board and then bring them back the next turn. So you brought them in on turn 2, and then you take them off in turn 3, and then you bring them back on turn 4. So for your 100-point unit, you've only actually them on the board for 2 turns. And I don't think they're going to make any impact while they're there, really. If they were troops, I'd be all over them. But as an elite's choice, I cannot see anything that they do better than anything else we have.
Then a 40-point unit of 2 company veterans.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, when you talk about those 40-point units of 2 company veterans, I guess the one advantage these guys have is you have the redeploy strat with the... Yep. And I mean, I guess your Assault Squad has that. So maybe there's an argument that they could be a C choice.
I think it's I mean, Transhuman, they've got that over the Assault Squad.
Sure.
The Assault Squad's got the option for jump packs and 12-inch movement.
Yeah. I just don't think I'll take them. I'm going to use my Transhuman on my Bladeguard or something else that I care about. Maybe I'll use it on an Ancient because I care about them more. Okay.
So do they make it to C or are they top of D?
I'd put them in C. I would only put a unit in D if I feel it is useless and has nothing to bring to an army, tactically or offensively. And I've identified a tactical use these models could be put to.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do Octarius data, these guys could do it in 2 fronts for 100 points.
Engage as well.
Yeah,
while they're doing it. And
they would be potentially surviving because of transhumans. So, I guess they're lowest of the C. I mean, they're only, if you think about it this way, they're only 1 AP worse than Assault Intercessors, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but they can't fight twice. And
they're not troops, like you said.
And they're not troops. If they were troops, then I'd be saying that actually these are a really great unit. We should take these things. But as an elite, I just can't see any situation that I could possibly bring these that do a better job than any other option.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why they're at the bottom of the C. They do a better job than these Ancients, but that's about it.
Yeah.
There
isn't a Phobos Ancient.
Thank God.
We sneak around with our giant flag.
Redeploy the flag. Okay. Next up, then, we're going to look at Relic Terminators. And why don't you go first on this one, Tony?
I quite like these. In comparison to the Reviers, I don't think these are shit. I think these are quite good. The benefit they have over regular Terminators is that you don't have to take a Power Sword on the Sergeant.
And they can take Lightning Claws, right? And
you can take a Lightning Claw, and I'll probably take a Lightning Claw and a... I wouldn't take 2 Lightning Claws because then, apart from the Sergeant, issue a game. Well, no, because you can put something fancy on the Sergeant for Assault Terminator, don't we? Yeah, I wouldn't take double Lightning Claws because then they just cost a point more than normal Terminators and you don't get any benefit. But I would probably consider a single Lightning Claw and a Combi Bolter to give a little smattering of anti-infantry screen clearing and a little bit of stabbing with the lightning claw. And then I think you've got a nice unit that can teleport in, do some actions, shoot some stuff, stab some stuff. It's pretty hard to kill with that 2+ save and 5+ invulnerable. I think that they do everything the Reviers did better. I think they're all right. I think they're a pretty good unit. 3 wounds is nice too.
Yeah, especially against 2 damage weapons, it's nice. Yeah, I generally kind of like these guys. A 5-man squad is at 170 points, which I think is decent. Like you said, with Lightning Claws, it keeps them nice and cheap in terms of Terminators. Good in melee, decent at shooting. What do you think, Mark?
I was really disappointed that they took Tartaros Terminators and Cataphractii Terminators and just mashed them into one characterless unit by comparison, because they were good the way they were, a little bit more specialised into movement or resilience. I thought that was cool. And doing this is just a bit of a shame. I don't know why they did it, but well, whatever.
I always ran the Tartaros ones because they were just normal Terminators, but better.
Yeah,
slightly better.
And the Cataphractii with 4-up in one was great, but we haven't got the option for any of that now. So, nah. The Bolter and Lightning Claw is cool. I wouldn't teleport them, and the reason why I wouldn't teleport them is the reason why I wouldn't teleport most things that I want to go into mid-board, and that is we espouse the benefits of infiltrators so much with the 12-inch denial bubble that they've got to be taken into account. And if you want to put a resilient squad of infantry onto an objective, then you can't take the chance that they're going to be screened out either by the 12-inch or just regular unit with the 9-inch bubble. I'd rather walk something onto the board to get it where I want it to go. Yeah, they're good for the points. The build you did with the guns and Lightning Claw is great. The fact you can give them plasma blast guns is nice. The Reaper autocannon is not a bad gun, really.
For 5 points,
you can only put the plasma though on the sergeant, and I don't know if I'd risk sniping my own sergeant out of the squad with that.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
The Reaper autocannon for 5 points. I don't know if I like it or not. I don't know if it's worth 5 points. It's not bad, is it?
Yeah, no, it's really not bad at all.
The Volkite's not bad either.
I'd prefer a Reaper autocannon over an assault cannon, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Assault cannons really struggle against land speeders.
Oh yeah, that's the key reason why people don't take them these days. That's true.
Yeah. Land speeder meta.
It's good. It's not bad. I just don't really see many reasons why I would choose this unit over the other units that we would have to fill the role that they would do, which is resilient infantry that would have to sit on objective.
The only reason to do it would be that they're dishing out a little bit more firepower, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think it puts them in an S tier. I mean, if you compare them in raw survivability against the Bladeguard Ancients, the Bladeguard Ancients are slightly ahead.
I would rather take the Bladeguard over these because Blood Angels buff melee, and I don't want to take firepower that isn't getting buffed compared to the melee power that is.
Mm-hmm. I'd actually been considering these guys as a replacement out for my Centurions. So, based on that, for me, I think it's either high B or low A. What about you, Mark?
I think I would. I'd put them in high C.
Okay. What about you, Tony?
I think that they're a B. I think the ability to stick Chain Fist on every model if you wanted to, that's quite nice, including the Sergeant, which you can't do with the other ones. Teleport it down and do some damage. Yes, it can be screened out, but if you know they're going to plenty of screening about, then you don't do that and you just deploy them. So I think that they're pretty good. I think I rate them a little bit higher than Mark does. I don't think they're really an A. I think that they're a solid good B.
Okay, yeah, let's do B then. I think they're middle of B then, based on that. I do think they're a better option than the Aggressors right now, just because I think they're a bit more versatile. And I think the 2 damage on the Power Fist actually, like I said earlier, really hurts the Aggressors. Okay, moving on to number 20, and that is good old regular Scouts. And I guess we haven't talked much about Scouts since
they stopped being troops.
Yeah.
We talked about him in the last episode. What are you talking about? Because he can go in the land speed of storm.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right, fair enough.
The
Don't know what you're talking about. It's only last episode.
the one interesting thing that I didn't realise last week when we looked at this is if you do put the scouts in the land speeder storm, the scout sergeant can have 2 infernal pistols. Because he can replace his... Well,
What?
Yeah, and you could shoot both infernal pistols from the land speeder, if I'm correct.
Oh my god.
Right? Because you can replace his bolt pistol with any pistol and his chainsword
You and your bloody Inferno pistols.
so you could have a scout sergeant inside a land speeder storm with 2 infernal pistols. I mean...
You could chuck a missile launcher in there as well.
yeah.
I never even thought of that. All right, so that is one way that the scouts could be played, but I mean that's you're increasing the cost of the scouts pretty significantly, I guess. But yeah, I mean scouts. What is there to say? 1 wound, 4+ save, 14 points per model. 14 points per model seems a lot against those sisters models that are 14 points per model and have like 8 different buffs and a 2+4 vulnerable save. I don't know. Scouts to me don't feel super good right now. Is there anything either of you want to add on scouts, or will we just try?
The only use to which I'd put them would be the same I mentioned for the Reviers. There'd be a cheap, outflanking, deep striking option to come in and do objectives or backfield and
they just
essentially go towards secondary stuff.
Yeah, they just do it worse because there's no way to redeploy them after they join the battle, right?
Yeah, they're not fast. They're not a way
fast,
to go
they're
around
not
with
durable.
the gorilla.
They got
They're-
half as many wounds,
Yeah.
worse saves.
They're a little bit cheaper to make up for it, but I don't think they're cheap enough to make up for it.
Has anybody else got boxes of these lying around?
Yes, boxes and boxes of little bastards.
No, but I did just finish making 6 squads of them for the 8th edition before they changed all the battalion stuff.
6 squads. of
6 squads and all painted, yeah.
them.
So
Jesus.
I'm really glad
I didn't
that
get
I did
to the
that.
painted stage. I'd got them all built, but I hadn't got them painted yet. They were lined up ready to get sprayed.
No, I remember I made the conscious choice of painting them before other models, and I was like, oh, well, that was the greatest choice ever. Yeah,
So it goes, innit?
I guess right now, are Scouts the next unit that gets placed in D? Like, is there ever a situation that we include Scouts based on our super competitive elite slots?
I was just looking at the Scout sniper rifles thinking, could you stick a load of those in there and use them? But why? No, you can't. They're rubbish. Even with the sniper rifles at 16 points, I'll tell you what, I'd much rather have an Eliminator for 25.
Yeah.
I like the Astartes shotguns because they're cool.
Yeah,
And a squad of 5 of them all chonked up for melee could actually put out some damage.
It
In
can,
theory.
but we're really stretching for use.
No, this is the reason why to put them above the Ancients, that's all.
Oh, right, okay. I mean, I could put them above the Ancients, yeah. I mean, it's a cheap unit that could come in, and I guess... I mean, with the combat knives, I guess you still get like 20-odd attacks.
Yeah,
so, I mean...
still get a good chunk of attacks out of them.
Yeah, I mean, they're better than the Ancients, but I don't think they have any other practical use right now.
No. No. Sadly.
Okay. Really glad I painted 30 of them. Alright. Next up, Servitors. And I was checking because I think I maybe made the mistake when we talked about Servitors on the live stream the other week. And if you include a Tech Marine, then you can include 1 squad of Servitors for no force organization, correct?
Yep.
Yes, that is the... So, the use of Servitors, as far as I'm aware then, is a 30-point unit, which you could use, again, to score secondaries, but again, we're in the very competitive elite slot. So why don't you jump in first on Servitors, Tony?
I really like these. In some ways, I rate them higher than those company veterans. And the reason I rate them higher than the company veterans is that I have got a Tech Marine and I haven't got a captain.
And they're 5 points model cheaper.
And they're 5 points one cheaper. So if I just want something that's uber cheap to sit on an objective and do an action, and I care not even a tiny bit if it dies, then a 30-point squad of 4 Servitors is not a bad shout for that. I wouldn't bother with any upgrades whatsoever on them. Even though, actually, the servo arm is not useless, because it's basically a damage 3 power fist. Okay, you're only able to hit on a 5+, but you never know. You've got 4 of them. You might hit with one of them and do 3 damage to something if you manage to stick it in the back of a whirlwind or something. So I wouldn't give them any upgrades because I think that they're rubbish. Even with the Tech Marine nearby to get the 4+ hitting, really expensive heavy weapons hitting on a 4+ is too much. But taking an absolute bare bones unit for no force organizations chart to do actions, I think can be really, really strong. It's just dependent on whether you've got that Tech Marine for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably hit the nail on the head. It is mainly for actions. Mark, what do you think of Servitors?
Yeah, totally agree. Exactly that. Except that I don't run Tech Marines.
Yeah, me too.
Which is why I'd go with a company veteran over these. That's all.
Okay, so if you were running Tech Marines,
it's also easier to hide 2 models than 4.
Yeah, and the company veteran's got 2 wounds, and these guys have only got 1 and toughness 3, and they're going to die if they get sneezed at. But
depends what trade-off you want to make.
Who's going to shoot at them when they've got other things to shoot at? I think is the argument. Is the way they survive, basically.
They're 12 quid for 2, for fuck's sake. Oh, God.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Stupid.
I'd make my own, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or use, just make them out of Mechanicus bits.
Yeah.
That'd probably make most sense. Anyway, so are they like a B? Like, if you just want something that's cheap that's going to perform actions, these guys can fill that role. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, they're not B. C would be something that is average and is generally okay and not shit. B is something that has a use. A would be something you'd actively want to take in your list. So, given everything's discussed, yeah, I'd put them in B quite happily.
Tony, you happy with that?
I'd put them in A, on the caveat that you have a Tech Marine to bring them. If you've got a Tech Marine, then I think they're a really, really good unit. If you haven't got a Tech Marine, there's absolutely no way you should ever bring them.
Yeah, that seems fair.
So that's why I put them in A. I think, for me, they're easily in there.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's either you have the Tech Marine or you have a free elite slot. You know, like in some of these lists where you're running the double patrol, the patrol and the Vanguard, and you have 9 elite slots. Is it 9 or is it 8? Sorry, 8, I think. There is potentially places that you could have a free elite slot, so maybe that makes sense.
I've never seen those places. And I've heard they exist.
Yeah, I think that might be where my list, because I take fast attack in terms of attack bikes and Inceptors. I think I actually have some elite spaces, right? Okay, Sternguard next, and I think Sternguard are actually kind of cool, I guess, in that they have a bunch of different weapon options. You know, you can have. And you can kind of make a hybrid squad, right? Where you can have some heavy flamers and you can have some meltas. I think every model can take a combi. Why don't you jump in on this one, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, what you were starting to say there was really good. Sternguard are an inherently good unit. The amount of customizability they have is great. 2 heavy weapons if you want to take them with flamers. The amount of special weapons you can give them to fill any role you want them to do. They're tailor-made to hop out of a drop pod and nuke something quite happily. The only downside is that as Blood Angels, we get melee buffs rather than shooting buffs. That's the only downside against them in our list, really. Other than that, they've got so much potential. You could do almost anything with them, really.
Yeah, I did see some people talk about bringing them down out of a drop pod with a bunch of flamers and then have them support some sort of melee unit that comes out of the drop pod as well. That's certainly interesting. Tony, what do you think of Sternguard?
I think that they're really cool because they've got so many different options, and I think that can be really fun, and you can build something, really tailor it to your use. They're 20 points a model because they're just basically slightly better tactical marines. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they're really very good. Even for the drop pod role, which we talked about in our heavy support video, and we talked about that a little bit in our transports video, I think that there are better options to come out of a drop pod. I think I'm a massive flamer fan. But if I was going to do that, I'd bring Devastators with 4 heavy flamers and the sergeant with a flamer and an Armorian cherub, rather than these guys with 2 heavy flamers and 3 combi flamers. Because I think I'd just get more bang for my buck. If I wanted something to shoot at stuff, I'd probably want to go something bigger guns. I mean, the fact that they have got combi weapons is nice because it means that they can move and shoot. But most of the combi weapons have got a shorter range. So I think they're okay.
Ultimately, I think your problem with the Alpha Strike unit, because they're designed to be an Alpha Strike unit, is they'll come down, they'll shoot some stuff, and then they'll die.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll do enough damage before they die to be worth the investment in setup.
No, I think I agree with that. Yeah, so I mean, as versatile as they maybe are, then I guess the real question is, would you ever take them? I don't run drop pods myself. I own drop pods, but I don't run them. So based on that, like, I guess C for me. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, C's fine. They're a good unit. They have their uses. They just don't really fit with anything I'd want to do in a Blood Angel army.
Tony?
Yeah, they're a bit average for me, so it's C as again. I just think everything they do, we can do elsewhere better. And the reason I take them is that I think they've got cool models.
Low C or high C?
I'd take Reviers before I took them.
That's what I was thinking. Pretty low C.
I don't think I would. I don't like Reviers as much.
Sure, but at least Reviers can do something on the battlefield. Like, basically what we've said here is these guys can't do anything.
I'll tell you what Reviers do really well. They make amazing Sanguinary Guard Primaris conversions.
I knew you were going to say something trolley again.
Or Death Guard.
I see them more used for Death Guard. Yeah, Death Company.
Yeah, Death Company. You can make, because they've got that like almost like fleshy armor and stuff like that. So yeah, they make great Primaris Death Company.
Okay, next up then, and I was going to say, I guess we've got a few so we're going to look at Assault Terminators, and then we're going to follow it right after with regular Terminators. All right, why don't you go first, Mark? Assault Terminators.
So Assault Terminators are right up next to Bladeguard. They fulfill exactly the same role. They are a solid, resilient infantry unit with a lot of melee potential, whether you want to run them with Lightning Claws or Storm Shields. They could do a lot of work. They are tough as nails. I compare them very directly to Bladeguard. If I'm taking something that I want to hold a central area with that's resilient, it's going to be one of the two of them. And generally, Bladeguard will win out, but it's really, really close. The fact these have a 2-up save... If I'm going to take them, then I'm going to double down on resilience straight away. So it'll be Thunderhammer and Storm Shield, because if I want stuff that can kill, I'll probably want it to be fast with jump packs or whatnot. So that's going to bear in mind with that. So if I want them to be resilient, I'll take them with Storm Shields. So you're looking at straight away, you're going to be a 1-up save, 4-up invuln, 3 wounds. Pretty tough when you get right down to it. The Thunderhammers have a hell of a punch. -1 to hit's not great, but they're really strong. 3 damage is great, ×2 strength. You don't have transhuman, ultimately, is what really hurts them compared to Bladeguard. If I'm taking a unit to be resilient, I want them to be resilient as all fuck and back. And transhuman just gives the Bladeguard the edge.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I'm really sad that we don't have... we used to have transhuman in any model, right? They made it Primaris only a 9th. Yeah. Okay, Tony, what do you think?
To an extent, I agree with Mark on these. I do really quite like them. I'm a fan of the double Lightning Claw loadout because I like the fact that it makes them only 33 points a model. So if I'm running them, I tend to sort of take maybe 3 Thunderhammers and then a couple of Lightning Claw guys. And if somebody starts shooting at me with AP -2, I'll take it on the Lightning Claws rather than taking it on the expensive Thunderhammer models. I think if you put in the Thunderhammers on, they do become quite expensive at 43 points a model. And then I look at Bladeguard at 35. And I think that, hang on, why would I take these over that have got a point less move? I like the Deep Strike. You don't have to use it, but it's there if you want it. The Teleport Homer is something that is a bit situational. I keep
It's a
thinking
great
it
trick.
could
I've
be
never
useful.
seen anyone use it ever.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've always thought this could be really handy, but I've never really found a point in a game where I've suddenly thought, ha, come teleport Homer. Now we teleport here. So I think that they're pretty good. I certainly don't think they're as good as Bladeguard. Because of, like we said, transhuman. They're not quite as durable point for point. So I think that they're a good unit, but they're not a great unit.
Yeah, do you know what? It's funny you say that. I think that the change to Upon Wings of Fire, where you like basically lose the whole turn. I think the Teleport Homer has the same problem, right? If it was the same turn, I think it would be like if they made it 20 points and it was the same turn, I could get on board with it. But I think because you lose the whole turn, I think it's hard. You can't come down to turn 2 anyway. If you're going to be off the board for another turn, then potentially you're off the board for half the game.
For such an expensive unit, you can't be doing that. You can't be.
Yeah, so I think they're probably an A then, right? They're not like the greatest, but they do what you said that you want them to do. Come down, be super resilient. I think they probably trump the Centurions just.
I'd put them high B. If Bladeguard didn't exist, they'd be a lot higher. But they do. It's just a fact of life.
Sorry? Think they're a B?
Yeah, I agree with that. Low A, high B, I think.
All right, let's
Something
put
like
them at the top of B, I think.
Plus the fact we've got a special Blood Angel Assaults.
Oh, they're so cool.
Terminator
those
sculpt is beautiful.
Yeah, and I think if you pair them with if you pair the Thunderhammer guys with someone that gives them rerolls or Quake Bolts or something, then they're amazing. But I guess on isolation they're probably high B, right? All right, so let's just move straight into the regular Terminators, and I guess the difference I guess here is we're now looking at Power Fists and Chain Fists. You lose the ability to take the Storm Shield, and then we move on to Storm Bolters. And this is the wrong damn sheet. So you look at Storm Bolters and potentially like a missile launcher or an assault cannon. I actually think the missile launcher is crazy overcosted. 25 points seems overcosted to me. But very similar unit, trading some survivability for potentially if you just run them all with the Storm Bolters. I guess 20 Storm Bolters, 20 Bolter shots a turn. For a bit less survivability and a bit less melee damage.
Yeah, I mean, the firepower is nothing to sneer at, but that's not why I'm taking Terminators. If I want to take Terminators, it's because they're tough. And by choosing these Terminators instead of the other ones, you're losing out on the toughness. So, Blood Angels, you want to hit things.
It's very true.
And you don't want to shoot things. Every time you hit something, it is buffed more than it would be otherwise if any other chapter do it. Every time you shoot, it's just the same as any other shooting. So I'd far rather go for Assault Terminators for the resilience and melee focus over regular Terminators. Which is a shame.
Tony?
I like them. I rate them a little bit more than Assault Terminators because I like that little bit of extra versatility. I quite like the 5-point heavy flamer because it means if I want to sit something on an objective, they're still contributing to the game because they've got a little bit of shooting, and if somebody tries to charge them, you can heavy flamer them, which is nice or potentially nice. The chain fists are quite nice. There's a lot of things running around at the moment, like dreadnoughts and things like that, so the damage characteristic of 3 makes it fairly tasty. I tend to run a couple of them in a squad. I think that they're pretty good. They're not great. I think they're a little bit overcosted. I think the weapons options are massively overcosted. The Cyclone Missile Launcher is stupid at 25 points. And I think the Assault Cannon for 10 points is a little bit too much as well. I think that should be 5, and then I'll be thinking about it. My big problem with it is why have I got to take a Power Sword on the Sergeant? Power Swords for us are better than for anybody else, but I'd still much rather have something else than a Power Sword. So I think they're a solid unit, but they're in no way a kind of a top tier unit.
Yeah, I think I agree with the assault cannon for only 2 extra shots for 10 points against the bolter, because these guys have bolter discipline, right? Seems meh. So if the other Terminators were high B and our Relic Terminators were sort of low B, then I guess these guys are either going to drop in lowest B or highest C, I would guess.
I'd put them in C. They're not shit, but I don't see a reason to take them in my army.
Yeah. Highest C then? Tony, you agree with that?
I'd put them lowest B. I think they're very similar to the Relic Terminators, just with slightly crapper sergeant weapon, basically. So I think we're arguing semantics on this one, really, between highest C and lowest B, really, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean,
they're
I guess
around that kind of area.
Yeah, if you don't own any of the other Terminators, but you have a squad of these, then I guess they are fieldable. They're not
going to hurt you for fielding them.
No. Just nothing amazing, I guess. Okay, alright, so up next then is our recently increased points costed Vanguard Veterans. And this, although this one is with a Thunderhammer, I generally don't recommend the Thunderhammers on them because they're 37 points per model, I think now. Might have even gone up more, has it?
They're bloody expensive, but they're still 3 damage.
Yeah, I think...
And with the amount of ways we've got to get them into the Assault Doctrine now, the -2 AP down to up to -3 it's not bad.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I run Vanguard Veterans every game. I'm running them with the flavor of the month, I guess, Lightning Claw and Storm Shield for the most part, and I think that is 30 points per model. So I guess if you add the Thunderhammer now, you're 39 points per model, which is kind of crazy. I guess if it's up to me, I'm running them either with a Lightning Claw or Thunderhammer. I don't really rate Power Fist. There's too many things now that -1 damage and just basically neuter the Power Fist. So I would save the 5 points every time and run the Lightning Claw over the Power Fist, or I'd go the other way and run the Thunderhammer. I like Vanguard Veterans. I like that they have an invulnerable save. In some ways, this makes them... I mean, it just flat out does actually make them more survivable than Sanguinary Guard. They're a tiny bit cheaper than Sanguinary Guard. You do lose attacks, unless, of course, you have the Lightning Claw, and then you're doing the same amount of attacks, but you are just doing 1 damage against 2 damage, but, it's...
The Lightning Claw reroll just makes them so useful, the baked-in reroll to wound.
Yeah, so, for me... The way I know a lot of people still like to run multiple squads of Sanguinary Guard. I like running 1 Sanguinary Guard, 1 Vanguard Veteran. I guess it's personal preference, but I like these guys. I put them in S. I run them every game. I did do maths where I compared them against the Death Company, and they do less damage than the Death Company, about 10 or 20% less, but with the Storm Shield, it makes them like 50% more survivable than Death Company. You 2+, 4+ against just a 3+ off the Death Company, and I always find the 6+ shrug on the Death Company underwhelming. So, yeah, I mean, I would put these guys in S. Do either of you guys run Vanguard Veterans? Tony, you want to go first?
I do run a unit. I run a little unit 5 with a Lightning Claw and a Storm Shield on every model. Sometimes I might swap out the Sergeant's one for an Inferno Pistol if I need to find a home for 5 points. But often I'm a bit cheap. Well, that doesn't change the costing. Ignore that. I do like them. I do really rate them. I think they're really, really good. I think for Blood Angels, they are amazing. That reroll to wound and the fact that we get +1 to wound means that they can pretty efficiently kill anything they charge. I don't like running big units. Some people love running huge units of these and using them to hold the middle and just be really durable. And I don't like the way that means that blast weapons, because the best way of killing them is just volume of shots. So if you're making it easy for people to volume of shot them, or... Yeah, I'm not. So that kind of lets me down a little bit on them. So I tend to quite like sort of 5-man annoying troubleshooting units. The increasing cost means that I used to run 2 units and now I'm only running 1 unit. I do think that has hurt them, but they're still good.
Okay, Mark? If
you're running something resilient to hold the mid-board, then why would you take Vanguard Vets? You're new to the fact that they've got mobility with the jump packs, and whatever they do for resilience of Bladeguard do better. Having said that, there is a holy trinity, so to speak, of assault units that you can take as Blood Angels. And they are Sanguinary Guard, they are Death Company, and they are Vanguard Veterans. And the three of them do slightly different things, all of which are equally valuable. And the Vanguard Vets, the space they hold is they can take Storm Shields. They can be the most resilient of the lot, which is brilliant. It puts them on a 2-up armor, 4-up invuln, 2 wounds. And the Lightning Claws just have such amazing synergy with the Blood Angel rules of +1 to wound. And they'll be re-rolling to wound as part of what they're baked into. It's great. There's no getting around it. If you want to give them real heavy punch, you can give them Thunder Hammers to bump them a bit more, which is wonderful. If you want to run them a little bit cheaper, do them with Chainswords. The only thing that you'll lose off that is the re-roll to wound, and you'll save some points, which is fine. So with the trinity of assault units I mentioned, you've got, the way I see it is the Vanguard Vets are the fast survivable ones. Sanguinary Guard are kind of middle of the road, mid-survivable, will kill most things that they blender. And the Death Company issue all kind of defensive ability whatsoever and just go rah, ////, multiple attacks, kill everything, and then die 2 seconds later, because that is literally their job. And there is a role for all three of those in our army. I would gladly take a unit of each every single game.
Okay, so it's an S from you then?
Yes, straight away.
Yeah? You happy it's an S, Tony?
Yeah, I'd say they're an S.
Yeah.
I think they took a hit, but that doesn't mean that they're knocked out of a tier, if that makes sense.
They play so closely into what Blood Angels do and the buffs that we get from being a chapter that it's hard not to justify it.
Okay. Great. We also didn't mention they have melter bombs as well, which is another cool little thing, I guess. Okay, next up in Elite slot is the Venerable Dreadnought. And I don't really play Venerable Dreadnoughts. Maybe you should jump in here, Tony, being a resident Dreadnought expert, right?
I don't mind this guy. I think an extra 10 points, 15 points to give him Weapon Skill, Ballistic Skill 2 is a fair trade. I think that makes him a little bit better as a weapons platform and a little bit better as a combat platform. I think the assault cannon that he comes with is a little bit underwhelming, but that's a bit of a downside to assault weapons. I think that some of his options, for example, the dreadnought weapons, things like las cannons, are just too expensive. 20 points is too many points. Otherwise, it'd be a great long-range platform. I have seen people running them with the twin las cannon, the missile launcher, and making the most out of that 2+ ballistic skill on those weapons, which can be quite nice as a shooty unit. But I personally don't, and I just run him as a bit of a luxury basic dreadnought, really. Stick with the same loadout. If you give him the multi-melter, he costs an extra 15 points, and he's hitting it on a 2. And he's going to punch slightly harder in combat. So it's not a bad unit. It's very comparable to the regular one. So yeah, I think he's very comparable. It's whether you've got that spare 15 points and you particularly want a little squat boy.
Yeah, and he also runs on a 6+ Feel No Pain, right?
Yep.
Yeah, which is better.
Yeah, it's not bad. Core and Smokescreen as well. So,
yeah.
What do you think, Mark?
Exactly the same. If I was going to run a Dreadnought, I would run this one over the regular one every time, because the increase of his weapon skill and ballistic skill and the 6-up shrug is just flat out worth it. I love reliability in all things, and just being able to hit on a 2 over a 3 is straight away so much more attractive. Aside from that, yeah, exactly what Tony said.
So, in between the Contemptor and the regular one, you think? Or does the 6+ shrug push him above the Contemptor?
I think it shoves him ever so slightly above the Contemptor. The real problem is that the weapons options are just too expensive. If they were a little bit cheaper, then I think it'd be really good. But all the ones you might want, like the Twin Las Cannon, are too many points. You know, for free, you've got a choice of a heavy plasma cannon, which I'd never take because it's like the worst possible plasma cannon in the army, or the assault cannon, which is rubbish. So, yeah, you just need some slightly better weapon options to be really good.
Yeah.
A bit like the Contemptor, really.
Yeah, very much like the Contemptor.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if we move on. Number 27. We're getting there, guys. About 6 left or something. And next up, put your question. I don't know if I could actually find a picture of veteran intercessors, so we just have regular intercessor picture here, but these guys are veteran intercessors, and sometimes I see people on forums or the Facebook groups honestly talk about, like, have you considered veteran intercessors? And I've looked at their profile in depth and I've considered them, and honestly I've thought, like,
written them off straight away.
Like they're intercessors with 1 extra attack as far as I'm aware, and they go into the elite slot, right?
Yeah,
that's the only difference.
And lose obsec.
Yeah, so you're basically paying extra points for 1 extra attack. Yeah. I mean, maybe in another chapter that works, but for us, is that not just Death Company?
Pretty much. Extra attack is good. I mean, we're Blood Angels, we like hitting things, but I'm going to hit things with better than my fists. Thanks.
We can take hand flamers. I'm not sure other chapters get that.
Oh, woo.
I'm just throwing that out there. This is important stuff.
Yeah, I mean...
all right. I mean, hand flamers are great against land speeders, obviously. So yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They're
fucking awful, aren't they?
Oh god, they're so useless.
Yeah, veteran intercessors.
Why would you ever take these over a squad of regular intercessors?
I mean, to me, they're literally a D. Like, if you want intercessors, just take the troop intercessors, right?
I think the benefit of an extra attack is all well and good and all, but not for the sake of taking up an elite slot that will do so much more for us. Nah.
Yeah, I just don't see it. Okay. We all top of, actually, I was going to say top of D, but actually, are these just the worst elites that we can pick, or is it?
I mean, on the field, they don't suck.
I would say they're probably better than scouts.
Okay. And here's a really
put them in the bin.
I would take
they
scouts
go in the
before I took
dumpster.
these.
Okay,
down in the dumps.
Here's the one thing: you're gonna give up honor of the chapter to pick these guys as well, aren't you? So you're not going to be able to fight twice.
No, you can't fight twice because they're not assault intercessors.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, you'd be able to shoot twice with them instead.
Okay. But you can do that with regular intercessors anyway, so yes.
Exactly.
For exactly the same damage output.
The only thing that they're better than are these ancients.
In the bin.
Alright, moving on then. Death Company Dread, and this one is interesting, I think. And a ton of this comes back to the argument about the Ironclad earlier, in that, like, he's super similar, right? What he loses in toughness, he gains in the 6+ shrug. He's got the Blood Talons, which...
The Blood Talons still come with the baked-in rerolls, don't they?
Rerolls to wound. They used to be hits and wounds. Now they're just wounds. So I guess his biggest weakness is his weapon skill of 3+, but...
He's also not core.
Not core, and they also took 2 inches off his movement because...
You
know, whoever wrote our codex didn't get the memo that everything should be overpowered this edition.
Yeah. Magna Grapples are now completely useless. No reason to take those whatsoever. I mean, you don't have to. You can take smoke launchers, which is just a bit better.
For 5 points, you can prevent that terrible repulsor from potentially fleeing.
Yeah, but the fact that vehicles now shoot in combat really does...
Stop it.
It does really make...
Stop thinking too much into it, all right?
It really does make it useless. I don't know. I mean, I think if you arm it with a double heavy flamer, if you...
Double heavy flamer, two blood talons, smoke launchers, run them up the field. Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes in the exact same points as the Ironclad at that point, 145 points. It's just missing the core and those reroll ones on hits, which is nice. But overall, I mean, you're still on strength 10, -2, I guess -3, and you get an extra attack over the Ironclad as well, don't you?
Yeah,
you do.
Due to Black Rage.
And it maths out pretty much the same on durability.
Oh, I'm sorry, you get 2 extra attacks, because that 5 attacks won't have the Black Rage extra attack baked in it, will it?
No, it
won't.
Whereas the Ironclad just has 4 attacks, I believe, right?
Yeah, and I think the reason for that is the Death Company Dreadnought has no choice but to be equipped with 2 melee weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why it's got the extra attack baked into its profile. Either way, it's still got an extra attack.
And it's rage. It's just rage.
Yeah.
I think these are great. Actually, I think they're really good. And we keep hearing on the Discord, and a lot of people are chatting about sticking heavy flamers on them and using them to cleave up raiders and cook their contents, or the other way around. I kind of remember, but I think they're great for that. Don't charge it, but it's going to charge you, and both outcomes are bad for you. It's a bit sad they lost that couple of inches of movement, but yeah, I think they're great. I think they're probably the best melee dreadnought option we have.
Yeah, and you can Forlorn Fury it if you really want. Get it 6 inches forward of the pre-game.
Why not?
Yeah.
Or stick it in reserve and scare the pants off someone when it comes on the board.
Yeah. I used to use the I used to use it like that with the Magna Grapple when it gave you +2 against charges on vehicles. That was really nice. I don't know why they changed this. I think that was better. But anyway,
plus it's got the Death Company strat that lets you change its 6-up shrug to a 5-up shrug, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Duty Eternal, remember? It's still got its Duty Eternal.
Yeah.
Which 5-up shrug, Duty Eternal, that's going to be actually really annoying to remove.
So if we put the Ironclad lower A, like I said, I think it's not like the Ironclad's going to be performing you actions anyway, right? So I guess this is high A, and maybe even S.
I wouldn't put it S.
No, high A then? I'm above or below the Redemptor?
Below the Redemptor.
Yeah, I could agree with that. What about you, Tony?
It's certainly in there with the Redemptor, isn't it? I would, at the moment, I'm leaning a little bit. Oh, where am I? I don't know. I can't make my mind up. Someone's going to have to do it for me. But definitely A.
I'm happy with the way you put it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's better than the Redemptor. Redemptor is really good. But it depends who you're facing. Against some people, that extra shooting the Redemptor. If you're shooting a Death Guard or something like that, where you want to soften them up a good chunk, Redemptor's a better choice. Whereas if you're just playing someone who you want to tear some faces off, then that's when your Death Company Dreadnought comes in. I don't think I'll bother with the melter guns on it.
No.
Totally agree.
I think I'd rather have the heavy flamer.
Yeah, because I think you want to keep it alive to do as much combat as possible, and the way that they're going to kill it is charge it, right?
Yeah.
So you
and I don't entirely think that sticking with the Furioso Fist is a bad shout either. That extra 5 points of the Blood Talons is nice for the reroll room roll. I think that's really nice. But I do think
be what,
a couple of points less strength, a single point less AP. So I do think that there are some armies where being strength 12, meaning you're wounding things of toughness 6 on a 2, which is, of course, is those new orcs, for example, is potentially not a bad shout. I'm not saying it's the optimal choice. I'm saying that there is a choice.
For the sake of extra points cost, yeah, I can see that argument.
I don't think that that's a bad choice. I don't think you're really doing yourself a disservice if you take the Furioso Fists.
No, I think
if you want to
agree,
save 10 points. Yeah, it's fair.
If you need to save 5 points for something else.
Well, it'll be 10 points because you need 2 Blood Talons, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think it's right up there. High A. Then we come to Death Company Intercessors, and I think this is a bit of a. I think this unit just suffers from the. What do you call it? It's like the lack of customization on Primaris units. This is 100% what is wrong with Death Company Intercessors, if you ask me. Well, they can't have a jump pack and lack of customization. Is there anything you guys want to add on Death Company Intercessors?
So you got the 2 ways you can take them. You can take them as regular Intercessors with guns, or you can take them as assault Intercessors with chainsaws and pistols. So we can dump the guns version straight away. Because if you're taking Death Company, why the fuck are you taking them with guns and not chainswords all the way? The fact that you've got a lot of models that can have a huge amount of attacks and be targeted with transhuman physiology and upgrade their 6-up shrug to a 5-up shrug can make them really surprisingly resilient, which is cool. Your only problem is a delivery method. That's the only problem. You got to get them up there to make the use out of their immense offensive ability. And why would you ever do that when you can take Death Company with a jump pack? And the answer is you wouldn't.
Yeah, there's only a few situations, I guess, or a few armies where
that
maybe
changes in 1,000-point battles. Because you start closer to each other, the distance in mid-board is a lot less, and if you want to bring them on from reserves, the board is a lot narrower, so they can come on and be effective a lot quicker and sooner. And tactics change, but in 2,000 points, no, I wouldn't take them. They're not bad, but I wouldn't take them.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think if Games Workshop give us a jump pack option on these guys, and maybe an option for more than just one of them to get a melee weapon, and I'm not asking for the whole squad to get customization, but at least more than one, because
even if they didn't, I'd still take the sheer amount of attacks these guys can put out with chainswords. Will mulch anything. They don't really need to be high strength when you're just hitting that many times.
True, but I also my personal opinion on that is I dislike how if you take 5 of them, you get one special weapon, but if you take 10 of them, you still only get one special weapon, right? Like, I feel like it should be at least worded for every 5, you can have a Thunderhammer or something, right? Rather than just like the squad just gets one Thunderhammer. But, yeah, I mean, you're right. I believe it's 7 attacks on the charge these guys get with chainswords, right? Because +1 Black Rage, +1 Chainsword, +1 Savage Echo, Shock Assault. So yeah, 5 of them is putting out 35 attacks if they're just armed with chainswords. It's kind of nuts. So I like it. Like, come on, Games Workshop. All these other factions have got everything. Why have we not got jump packs for these guys?
I suppose the answer is if they did give them jump packs, then immediately Firstborn Death Company would be utterly pointless. Right away.
Well, Firstborn, I guess if they had some more weapon options, they might not be totally pointless. But yeah, I mean, they want to sell you the new models anyway, Mark. So yeah, I mean, why don't they just give you new Primaris jump packs? We've waited long enough. Tony, what do you think of Death Company Intercessors?
My problem with Death Company Intercessors is that 24 points a model. Now, 24 points a model for what is essentially an assault intercessor with an extra attack.
That can't fight twice.
That can't fight
Although, to
twice.
be fair, they do a lot of attacks, so that would
they
be
do
broken.
have a lot of attacks.
If they could fight twice, you'd be taking
If
them.
they could fight twice, I'd be
nobody's
thinking
business.
these are pretty good. If they were quicker, I'd be thinking these are not bad. But I don't see why. Now, back to what Mark said, small games, these things are brutal. But in a larger game where you have got a few CPs, if you want, you can fight twice. I think I would rather take assault intercessors and then potentially use the fight twice strat if whatever I charged wasn't dead, and get OBSEC and save a fair chunk of points than take these. And so I really don't think that they're very good, to be honest. Because of those reasons. I think I'd rather have a troops choice that did the same job almost as well.
I know that personally we don't like running a lot of transports, but I mean that's just a choice that like probably all 3 of us have made, and that our lists don't really contain transports. If you did an impulsor and you put 5 or 6 of these guys in it, or 5 of them in like a Death Company captain to give them a bunch of rerolls, I actually think they're they are pretty decent. I think I give them like a low B. Like I'm not taking them myself, but like I don't think they're crap. Like I think just the fact that each model has 7 attacks is kind of nuts. For 24-point model, I know that you can fight twice and stuff with other ones, but if you're talking about not spending any CP, just 7 attacks for 24 points. Once we hit turn 3, they're all at -2. They're all with +1 wound. It's generally pretty great. So I think I would put them lowest of the
and then
B.
your opponent decides, oh, they're a danger now. You drop CP on transhuman, CP on unyielding, or whatever the hell it's called. Then suddenly they're a real bugger to shift with private feel no pain, force to wound. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Tony?
I think them for me, they're closer, more of a C than a B. I do like the fact that you can make them, if you don't mind dumping a load of CP into them, you can make them pretty disgustingly survivable. They get really expensive to do that with if you've got a big unit of them.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do it, I think you need to use a big unit of them. So that is a possibility, but that is a very expensive possibility. So I don't think that would particularly change my opinion of the unit over standard assault intercessors. I can never see myself taking these over those. So yeah, definitely a C for me.
Okay, I think I feel like when we put the aggressors in here, we said they were either high C, low B. I guess these are the same, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If it was strictly down to me, I'd plonk them above the shooty Terminators, but that's just me.
All right, so I think that I'll put them right in the middle. You'd have them here. I think Donnie would have them here. We'll put them in the middle somewhere there. But yeah, I mean, and I think you're right. In smaller games, these guys maybe actually shift quite a bit forward up the B line, based on the fact that you could just get them where they need to be a lot more.
Yeah,
or
6-inch Forlorn Fury matters on a 1,000-point board. Yeah.
I think that they should have just normalised the Forlorn Fury amount, honestly. That I'm trying to think if they had normalised the Forlorn Fury and everything just forlorn like a flat 12 inches like it was in a previous edition, would that make things a lot more interesting? I think probably it would have.
I'd use it on my Death Company Dreadnought, though.
Yeah, I would. I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
I wouldn't use it on some assault intercessors.
Okay.
Sorry, black assault intercessors.
Let's go talk about Firstborn Death Company as it stands. And I think we've kind of touched on these guys a couple of times already, I guess. I think, Mark, you said you probably thought that they were probably in an S?
Yeah, absolutely. They are one of the secret sauce that defines Blood Angels straight away. They hit so hard, you can Forlorn Fury them up after the first turn roll has been made if you want to. If you're running them, there's no real reason why you shouldn't run them without a jump pack. You can kit them out to do stupid amounts of attacks with the chainswords, or do heavy damage with whatever special melee weapon you want to give the entire squad, or just a few in the squad. They're so versatile, they're so punchy. Yeah, they're great. Okay, they can't do actions. Boo-hoo, whatever. Yeah.
And what about you, Tony?
Proper Death Company. I actually really like them. I did run a list that was entirely Death Company once, because I'm a massive child and I thought it'd be hilarious. That's the only game I've ever lost by tabling my opponent. I completely ignored every single primary objective for the entire game and just went full ham. And actually, it was brilliant.
That must have been so cathartic. Oh, God.
It was hilarious because it's like, but the objectives that you could win if you took that objective, or I can charge this entire unit into these like 3 remaining scouts. You know? Blood for the Blood God. No, sorry. Yeah, I do really like them. I like running them in a unit 5 with a single Thunderhammer. I can see an argument for sticking an extra bonus one in there. I wouldn't run them without the jump packs unless I was being one of our Flesh Terror brothers, and I wanted to stick them in there and chuck Gabriel Seth as well and have the Doom bomb of nastiness. Or maybe if I just want to run them in drop pod anyway, we've talked about this before, and they maths out better from coming out of a drop pod than pretty much anything else we've got. So they can be quite nice if you want a big nasty turn 1 drop pod assault. So if I was doing that, then I wouldn't take the jump packs, obviously. But other than that, I probably would, and I'd run them in a little unit. Or alternatively, I'd run a whacking great big one, as big as I could. I'd stick a couple of Thunderhammers in it. I know Resi was a fan of this one. I'll stick them right at the front of my deployment zone and say, I'm going to Forlorn Fury you, and watch my opponent try and hide their entire army right at the back of the thing, which means you might have even won there, because now, even if you don't need to do that, because they've just deployed back so far to prevent you being able to charge them on turn 1, you've got free reign to take the whole of the midboard. So I think just the sheer scare factor, it can really add a massive amount of value to them. I'm not so sure that the 5+ Feel No Pain on these guys is amazing. I think it costs a little bit too many CP on a big unit, and on a small unit, I'm not sure it gives enough of a buff to be worth it. I think that they're a really great unit. I think the only thing they really suffer from is that Vanguard Veterans are here and they are a bit more durable, but now they went up in points. I think that the choice has become a lot closer than it was before the Vanguard Veteran points increase. So like Mark said, they are part of our trifecta of face smashing.
You don't take Death Company to be resilient, you take it to kill shit. The fact that they have the shrug is nice, but it's not what they're there for.
And they
also,
really do kill shit.
Oh yeah, there's a list building strategy that says when you do take melee units or your melee sentry unit army, like we are, you take probably one of your melee units to be as max size as you can afford it to be, to just be the biggest Death Star that'll charge up on something and mulch it, whatever the hell it may be. And it's either going to be a unit of these or a unit of Sanguinary Guard.
Yeah, okay. I mean, they're an S. Above or below Vanguard Veterans?
Below. Resilience is more important than ever these days due to holding objectives and surviving through your opponent's turn and your attacks.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Just below. Just below. They do more damage than the Vanguards, but like you said, no actions and a little bit less resilient. Okay. Sorry, you want to jump in with the point there, Sam?
No, fine. I was just going to say, now with the points increase, it's closer than ever.
I agree.
Especially when you're working about damage per sort of 100 points and stuff. So I think that they are still slightly below them, though, aren't they? But only very slightly now, whereas it was a bit more of a gulf.
Yeah, this honestly, tonight's thing has got me rethinking a lot of decisions on my current army list, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I've got painting to do for a tournament coming up, but anyway.
It's a great thing.
Boxes of eliminators after our heavy support.
If you didn't come out of this rethinking what you were doing, then we're doing something wrong, because it's our job to go over all the possible options to present to you guys, the viewers, about what things could be. And it's great that we're coming up with things that we haven't necessarily considered before either.
Yeah, or we've been sleeping on, I guess. Okay, this is number 31, the Furioso Dreadnought, and I guess in some ways very similar to our Death Company Dreadnought. So, I mean, he's a little bit cheaper. He can still take the Blood Talons, he can still take the Magna Grapple, the Smokes, same toughness and wounds. Obviously, he loses the Feel No Pain. But if he does take 2 close combat weapons, he gets +1 to his attack, so he would just be 1 attack less than the Death Company Dreadnought. So
he's like middle of the road, isn't he? If you want to take a Dreadnought for resilience, then you'd go for probably an Ironclad, maybe a Death Company Dreadnought due to the shrug that they can have on top of their damage reduction. If you want to take a Dreadnought for sheer melee death kill ability, it's going to be the Death Company Dreadnought. So the Furioso is a little bit cheaper for a little bit less output, a little bit less resilience.
Why has he got no core keyword? I just realised that.
They didn't give it to any of the Blood Angel stuff.
Oh, that's very nice of them.
They didn't give it to him, they didn't give it to Death Company Dreadnought.
Oh.
I've got no idea why. So that if he uses a stratagem that grants reroll, or he can't actually benefit from it.
Yeah, that's sad. So I guess that maybe puts him down a little bit.
Yeah, he's a victim of that. And he's a victim of the fact that he's kind of middle of the road compared to the excesses of the Death Company Dreadnought or the Ironclad. The frag cannon used to be a good reason to take it. Now it's just a bit crap, really.
I guess it's reasonable against 2 damage. Or sorry, 2 wound infantry, I guess, right? But most people will be running minimum squad size, so you're not going to get the maximum shots out your blasts, so questionable.
It's not quite suffered from Baal Predator Syndrome, but it's definitely not got a place, really.
It's not really healthy, is it?
No, what do you think, Tony?
I love Dreadnoughts. I think they're cool. I think this might be the worst one. And it makes me sad because it's our unique one. It doesn't have core, so we're not getting any rerolls. I don't particularly rely too heavily on rerolls anyway, but this guy really needs it if you want to be getting anything out of the frag cannon. I wouldn't take the frag cannon anyway because it's a bit crap.
I mean, it used to be. It used to be a
really good. Yeah,
full template. They're doing the same as heavy flamers. So why it's 2d3 rather than 2d6? I've got no idea.
No, I just don't think it's as good at doing anything that I want it to do than the other choices. And I think the fact that it hasn't got core means that I even think the standard Chicken Dreadnought is better than it. So, unfortunately, I think that of the Dreadnoughts, this is probably the worst one, simply because it doesn't do enough damage in melee, it's not survivable enough, and it doesn't do any shooting, and you can't buff it. So, I just don't think it really fits.
See?
Tony, is this a D-tier Dreadnought?
No, it's not D-tier. It's a Dreadnought. It's got Duty Eternal and 2 Blood Talons. It's going to pull the head off of most things, just not quite as well as other things. No, it's still. I still think it's probably sitting in. I think it's low B, high C. I think for me, for this boy,
I could
it's
put
not
this the
that
top.
much worse. It's just, I don't know. If it was another 5 or 10 points cheaper, I'd be saying that it would fit quite nicely. You know, you pay more, you get more. But in this case, you pay only a tiny bit more and you get a lot more.
I'd take it before I took the Invicta.
Yeah, I was going to
I'd probably
say.
take it Aggressors before this, I think.
I see.
That's where I put it.
Cool. I'm happy with that. Tony?
Yeah, I think I'll probably take it over Aggressors, but I'm biased.
I think I take Aggressors over it, actually. Just because, yeah. I mean, I guess you could load it up with the 2 heavy flame. I just don't like that it's not core.
It's the stratagem support Aggressors have over the Dreadnought that would mean
Yeah,
I'd
I
do
think
that.
so.
It's the fact it needs the support, whereas the Death Company Dreadnought doesn't care.
Yeah. Okay, penultimate unit then, and it is another Ancient. However, this Ancient might not be in the D tier. This is our Sanguinary Ancient. So he got changed. He was 125 points, which I think was way too much. He's now 110, which personally I think is still too much. But I mean, we gotta live with what Games Workshop give us. But yeah, are either of you guys running the Sanguinary Ancient? Do you think he's valuable right now at 110 points? Do you want to jump in first this time, Tony?
I'm not running him. He's probably, if I'm honest, at 110 points. He's still overcosted. I don't think many people would argue with that. He is overcosted, especially now we haven't got that many good banners or anything. But movement 12 means he can at least keep up with things. He has got a lot of the Sanguinary Guard sort of bonuses, which means he's a bit better in combat than the other guys. He's got his Angelus bolt gun, which means he's better at shooting than the other ones. He's got that. Yeah, he's not bad, is he? He's a bit better than the others. I just think he's a little bit overcosted. Really, he's used as a caddy for
The Wrath of Baal.
Wrath of Baal.
Yeah,
and it's whether you think that 110 points and a relic to bring the Wrath of Baal is a worthy investment, and whether you do or not is really going to depend on whether you think this guy is worth bringing or not. For me, I don't rate the Wrath of Baal as high as some people. But then I also don't run kind of like your Sanguinary Guard Death Star anymore. I don't think it works quite as well as it used to. So that knocks him down a little bit for me. But he's absolutely the best of our Ancients by far.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Yeah. And he does have the chapter banner. His banner actually has a use in that it can give a friendly core unit within 6 a +1 to their hit roll. Now,
which is why we can't take the chapter command upgrade, because he has the chapter banner.
Yeah,
right there.
And it used to be that banner used to let us reroll 1s, which I actually thought was a lot more.
Reroll 1s to wound. Yeah, it was very good. It synergized well with the pluses to hit you got from the Sanguinary Guard.
Exactly, yeah. And like they took away that synergy, right? Because the weakness of the Sanguinary Guard was that you had no way to reroll wounds. So this, they made it more expensive.
Not useful, is it?
Yeah, it's just not useful.
We've already got that with Heirs of Ascalion.
Yeah, because exactly.
So unless you're running him with something that's not Sanguinary Guard,
yep.
So maybe he's backing up something else.
Yep.
Then you can't even make use of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you could argue the fact that we have Vanguard Veterans and Death Company as the other S units, that there could be a use for the banner, but yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it?
There's definitely a use for the banner. The Wrath of Baal is the single sole reason to take this model, and it's a really good reason. Plus 2 inches of movement to any jump pack model doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're using your jump pack models as a countercharge unit, then that's 2 inches less they have to charge. It's 2 inches further you can have flexibility in responding to the enemy's movement. It's subtle, but it's really powerful. It's really flexible, especially in a game where the movement phase is the only thing that doesn't really have any randomness in it unless you count advancing. And the movement phase dictates what you're going to do in the rest of the turn. It is crucial, and the only thing that stops this being an auto take for me is because there are just those other characters that are that little bit more important to take, and he starts going into 4 characters, 5 characters, 6 characters, at which point Assassinate is a very real threat, and I don't ever want to take more than 4 characters because you're just giving away secondary points to your opponent at that point.
Yeah, and I preach that on the channel, don't I? That, like, every time Andrew brings 6 characters to battle, I'm just like, great, I'll pick Assassinate. It's a no-brainer. So I guess for me, he's probably high B, low A, but he doesn't synergize with how I play, right? Like, I don't try and rocket across the board and make those early charges. I try and do a bit of shooting, and then try and react. But, I mean, I guess the argument is if you try and react, you could do that. So, yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you that I think he's high B, maybe low A. Where do you want to put him, Mark?
His +2 to move buff puts him right up there next to the company champion for me. It's a very similar sort of movement style buff. Granted, it's not quite as useful as reroll charges, but the Sanguinary Ancient has a jump pack to compensate for that. Yeah, that's where I put him.
Okay, and then what about you, Tony? Where do you put him?
If he was 100 points, I don't think this would be nearly as much of a discussion as we're having. I think he's just that little bit overcosted for what he can bring. Now, movement is probably our most important phase. You could argue between that and the fight phase. So I think with the Wrath of Baal, but then you've got to bring another relic on him. That's potentially going to cost you another CP. If you've already got other characters you need to spend those on, you might not have that spare. So I would probably go... I think he's too many points to make it into A, and I think he's a top of B.
Okay. And then I guess since Mark wants some here, and I said top of A and you said B as well, what if we put him... Oh, we can't put him after Servitors, can we? What about there? Somewhere in between the two of them. Some people really, really rate that Wrath of Baal, and I guess like it is really...
And rightly so, it's a great relic. It's a really good pick.
Yeah.
If you need it. If you're running a lot of jump packs, then he becomes much more valuable than if you're not running so many jump packs and you're running 5 Dreadnoughts or something silly like that.
Yeah, last edition I was running 2 of these guys. You know that? One with Wrath of Baal, the other with the Standard Sacrifice. That was when they were 75 points per model, which was nice, though. I
don't know if I go that far, but...
I liked it. Okay, and then finally we look at Sanguinary Guard, and I guess kind of maybe save the best for last. I often talk about Sanguinary Guard. I think, I mean, point for point, they're probably our most damaging unit. They just struggle a little bit against -1 damage things these days, which are a lot more prevalent than they once were. But, you know, they are 3 attacks. They do end up with like 5, potentially 10 wounds per Sanguinary Guard, I guess, once you get to Savage Echoes, which is kind of crazy when you can run a squad of 8 of them for about 264 points, I guess that would be now. So that's potentially 80 wounds dished out in a single fight phase. I think I put them top of the pack. Like, I love them. I just don't think they're survivable, which I think Games Workshop have overlooked, right? Like, I think when they made them, when they added 2 points to them, I was like, have you actually played these? Because they don't survive. You know, they're just Marines with a 2+ save. Anything AP3 or higher will chew them up pretty quickly. They're only toughness 4. But, I mean, I always say point for point, they're the most damaging unit that we can probably bring. Why don't you jump in first on Sanguinary Guard, Mark?
If you're going to buff them with an invul save, then they're going to get a 5-up from Psychic Fortress or something. There's no way you're going to give them a 4-up from Storm Shield or otherwise. At which point, that's comparable to being hit with a -3 weapon. Very few melee weapons are -4 or higher. There are some, but they're not that many. So, really, it'd be nice if they had an invul save. I'm just not sure it'd make that much difference, really, when you got right down to it. These things kill shit, but good. They really do. They're the ultimate Blood Angel special source when you get right down to it. You'd think it'd be the Death Company, being more vampire-y, blood powerful, but these guys really are the shining exemplar of charge forward, kill stuff, take it. The death masks are very useful. They don't obviously have any effect when you're being shot, but if you're in melee combat, then having -1 to be hit by your opponent is always going to be a reliable way of taking less damage from them. Yeah, they're amazing.
Okay, Tony, you want to add anything about Sanguinary Guard?
I don't think I'm going to disagree on that. Yeah, I think they're probably our best top of the tree unit, but there's a couple of things that I think are worth thinking about with these guys. The Angelus bolt gun is not to be overlooked. It's an assault 2 weapon. It's got AP -1, which makes it better than a bolter. I think that's a pretty good gun. So the actual amount of shooting you can get out of these is pretty good.
Totally agree.
Don't take a plasma pistol. Just don't do it. Just don't go around killing your own 37-point models for fun. If you want to win, don't take a power fist because it would be a bad plan. It
looks very tempting to take a power fist to people who see the ×2 strength and the extra damage. Well, it's not extra damage, is it, anymore?
It's not extra damage anymore. It's the same damage.
Yeah.
You get ×2 strength. You've got the same AP as your sword, but you get -1 to hit.
The -1 to hit cancels out the benefit you get from the higher strength, really. And for the sake of 5 extra points, just take a sword or an axe.
Yeah. Swords and axes. The debate has gone backwards and forwards. Up until recently, I was firmly in the run swords, don't bother with axes at all. We are starting to see quite a lot of strength 5 things popping up. Toughness 5 things, sorry. Which means that the axes are becoming more and more valuable. That means that you are able to kill ATVs on 3s, which is nice.
2s if you charge.
Yeah. Which is very nice. And with all those orcs running around, it's going to come into its own. Yeah,
axes will
even more. I think they're going to probably slowly start to overtake the swords for their purpose. The Angelic Visage is nice, but there are a lot of things that are going to be punching them back that already got a -1, and they're not going to get any bonus against things like that. So when they're getting hit back by things like Power Fists and Thunderhammers and stuff like that, they're going to get spanked, and that's not going to help them. So they're not that unsurvivable. They're funny because they're pretty good actually when you look at it and you start mathsing it out. The 2+ save does mean that you've got to hit them with something pretty chunky on the AP to really lose that. Unfortunately, there are quite a few very chunky guns floating about, so they can get shot down by sort of things like plasma and stuff like that. Really does a number on them.
Yeah, I was going to say as well that they tend to be in against the hardest hitting enemy threats. For example, you come up against Death Guard, they're going after Mortarion. You come up against, Necrons, they're going up against a Nightbringer or something. So when they actually get fought back against, I find that there's times where you can lose 6, 7 of a squad of 8 in a single round of combat, right? It does happen. Yeah. So that's why I think it was harsh that they went up 2 points per model. I think they were fine at 30.
I strongly believe that was designed against a meta that was 6 months old. That's all it was. Yeah. They just saw where Marines were 6 months ago and did it then. And then it just happened to hit at the point where it wasn't relevant anymore. You can summarize ultimately why the Sanguinary Guard are so good because they're efficient. Everything on their data sheet is and goes towards them being melee killing machines. Nothing on them is redundant. Yeah. All the points they have are costed towards doing what they do.
correct, and they do survive okay. You know, they're not terrible with their 2+ save. Toughness 4 isn't what it used to be, I feel like. But
If you want survivability, you take Vanguard Vets, Storm
take the
Shields.
vets. Yeah. So I still rate them, like, I put them in S tier, and I put them first. I think they are our best melee unit. I am in one of these players that says spam, 3 squads of 8 Sanguinary Guard. I think that's too one-dimensional. But
Not anymore.
I still do put them as our best unit. Do either of you guys disagree with that?
If I was going to take one of the 3 assault units that I've been talking about, it would be Sanguard.
Okay, and what about you, Tony?
Mine's the same. I run a single unit of 7 of them, and I find that that's plenty to kill anything I want to kill. And there's a little bit of leeway in there if I happen to lose one going in. I wouldn't take any more than that. I think 1 is absolutely plenty. I don't need more than that, and they're such a big investment. 1 of them means they can be running near the Warlord, get that +1 to hit, whereas 2 of them means I can't. Support it with the Librarian with your Null Zone to really make a mess of things. I think the -1 damage, there's a lot of that running around, does hurt them, but if you've got 7 of them, the amount of damage you're doing anyway, even halved, it's usually enough to kill anything it needs to kill, and if it can't, well, shoot it first.
Yeah, I was going to say shoot it first, or hopefully your Warlord's with them anyway, he can finish it off, right?
My lists tend to start with units of 10 of them, and then they get shrunk down to 9 to 8 to 7 as I want to buy another unit here or an upgrade there, and I figure dropping a model or 2 out of the Sandguards isn't going to harm their potential that much. So yeah, that's kind of the sweet spot.
All right,
if I haven't killed it with 7, I'm probably not going to kill it with 10.
Yeah, I did actually see one guy put in an army list that I scored him down on the weekly show because he had 10 in the squad, and he was like, I just put in 10 because I keep coming up against -1 Death Guard damage. I feel you were really harsh on me, and I was like, oh well, I never thought of that, I guess. Sure, if you're going to come up against Death Guard every game, you want 10 of them. And I do agree with you, Tony, about axes. Now that you've got Custodes, Death Guard, Orcs now, all coming in at T5. Typically, the axes are going to start pulling ahead. They're just going to be the safer choice. And the thing is, once you hit turn 3 anyway, the axes are on AP -3 anyway. So I feel like if you hit things with AP -3, you tend to push them onto their invulnerable save anyway. So I think if you have the null zone, I guess potentially swords are a little bit ahead, but I think you're right. It's swinging back to axes. So we come in 2 hours 46 minutes. So that was quicker than I expected.
That's not bad. That could have been worse.
That's a good half hour or so less than I was expecting.
Yeah.
If anybody's still watching this, well done.
More power to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tune in next time for HQs, which will be just as long, if not longer.
Yeah, and then what's after that? Forge World? Or have we got anything?
It's going to be Forge World after that, and however much we split that into.
Yeah, do it in one hit.
You sure? That's a lot of day sheets.
Yeah, but most of them are shit.
Maybe want to split out Forge World. We'll think about it, I guess. And then I think stay tuned, because maybe after Forge World, we've been talking about maybe starting some sort of podcast, the 3 of us. So that might be a thing. If you guys continue to enjoy these videos, I think it could be a thing that we could do. I'd certainly like to, so I guess we'll talk about it. But yeah, thanks again, Mark and Tony, for joining us, and thanks to anyone that still is watching.
Honour and a pleasure. Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Have fun.
So leave us a comment down below, and remember, this is the 5th video in the tier list series, and there are more coming, especially Forge World has also been highly requested. So you can watch the other videos now, and these videos will help you think and make the strongest army lists that you can. You can also continue this discussion further in our Discord group, which you'll find in the video description. And if you want to support the channel, albeit for as little as a cup of coffee every month, you can find a link to both Patreon, or you can click the join button underneath the video and become a member, and that is always super appreciated. So thanks to everyone that is a member so far. I mean, the channel wouldn't be where it is without you guys. We've just passed 6,500 subscribers, which is awesome. I mean, that's a lot more than I hoped that I would ever get. So I appreciate the continued support. I really hope you enjoyed the video. There's lots more to come, and I will catch you in the next one, brothers. By the blood are we made strong. Peace.